everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Slam Superhero Lore and More. This is your co-host, Michael, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Murr-VELL, and today we're going to be taking a look at the DC storyline Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's right, and we are joined by special guest Adam-Antium. Thanks, Adam, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on this. I understand this is 63 issues altogether.
Something like that. Yes, we're doing all the crossovers,
It
all
might
the
feel
issues,
like that
everything.
once we're done talking about each issue one by one.
We'll do our best. Okay, let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
I want to give a before we jump to the plot. Josh, I know you got to go, but you got some food on the oven right now. But no, I'm just kidding. I want to talk about the first time I read this. I was a Marvel fan for a couple years. I came across this series. I started with number 3 and just dove in.
Interesting.
And I still loved it. It made me a lifelong fan of George Perez. It exposed me to every corner of the DC universe, even though they destroyed it at the end. But,
right.
Yeah. So this basically single-handedly made me a fan of DC. Adam, since you're next in line of seniority, what is your first exposure to this comic?
The exact time I can't quite recall, but it was a few years ago. And I think, like you, I was fully entrenched into Marvel, and I was exposed to a lot of the DC continuity and the idea of multiverses. In fact, I think it was the next Crisis that they had, that I was like, I gotta figure out what all this Crisis stuff is.
Was it Zero Hour?
It wasn't 0 Hour. It was the one they had in the mid-2000s.
Oh, Infinite Crisis.
Infinite Crisis, yes. And
okay.
I have to say, I read this and I was impressed, because one thing I love about DC, the way that the histories connect, my God, I love that they build up the world to actually be a world where superheroes have been there for 50, 60 years. I mean, it just gives it such a sense of great world building, which, as you say, they annihilated at the end of this book anyway.
Right.
But it's great. I really dug it. This is my 3rd time reading the entire series, so I'm very excited to dive into the nitty-gritty details of it.
And Josh, this was your first time reading it, correct?
This is my first time reading it. I am familiar with this storyline just because it's referenced so much in so many other comics and stories, and but this is my first time fully reading this storyline, and I've got to say, I'm not as familiar with the DC universe as I am the Marvel universe. So a lot of these more obscure characters, I don't know very well, or at all in some circumstances. And I think this is a fantastic way to have one of these stories told. I think that they did such a great job, and they had each character had like their moment to shine. And if a character was just in the background to show that this was a larger thing, they didn't focus on it. I feel like Marvel, a lot of their crossovers that we've talked about on one of our podcasts, they just they aren't very cohesive. They're kind of just there so everybody has a cameo, so we can have this big event going on to sell books, where this really felt like an event. This felt like a real story that was happening that had actual consequences. And obviously some of these things are going to be reversed later on in comics, but as a whole, this really did affect clearly the DC comics, and I think it's better for that.
Yeah. It is ironic that it was sort of the end of the multiverse, but the beginning of such a new era. So 30 seconds of context. At this time, Marvel was outselling DC. DC had one really big hit, which was New Teen Titans by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. But for the most part, they all their books were outsold by Marvel. So if you looked at like a top 100 chart, Superman and Batman would be, near the bottom. They were being outsold by Power Man and Iron Fist. But Teen Titans was a hit, and so they used that team. And Marv Wolfman came up with the idea, because Marv Wolfman was a longtime fan of both Marvel and DC, and he had the idea, well, we should streamline DC and make it more like Marvel. And so he came up with this idea of taking all these multiple universes, which we've covered on this podcast: Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, where the villains are evil, which we haven't talked about, unfortunately. Earth S with the Marvel family. Then Earth X, which is with the old quality comic superheroes. Then we're introduced to Earth 5 in this series, which is the Charlton superheroes, which DC had just bought a few years earlier, right? So they have basically a different Earth for every company they purchased, and also for the different versions of their characters, the World War II versions and the modern versions. So we're going to find out more as we go along, but we got to jump into this because there's so much to talk about. Okay, so I'm going to summarize number one. We open up with this beautiful cover, first of all. We got to talk about all of the Earths being destroyed. We see, the majority of the main DC superheroes, but we should point out Superman has got the Gray Temples, so we know it's the Earth 2 Superman. We see Firestorm, we see Blue Beetle, and then the new characters we see are Pariah and Harbinger, which we'll get to later on. So now we jump into the story. We see this again. Now, is Marv Wolfman a genius? No, but he knows exactly how to write a superhero comic, in my opinion. And he opens up with this beautiful narration, introducing the multiverse, and we see all the Earths, and then right away we're introduced to this antimatter cloud that's coming to destroy everything. And we're also introduced to the incredible storytelling abilities of George Perez, who is using the comics page in such a way that we can see layers of panels where the Earth is getting destroyed, but we're also seeing the reaction of Pariah. We're also seeing people fleeing. It's beautiful. And we're going to see this over and over. It's basically like a disaster film, people fleeing from the destruction of this antimatter cloud, right? And so he sees this happen, then he disappears from whatever universe this is. Then he reappears on Earth 3. Well, actually, first we cut over to Earth 3, and this is where the crime syndicate of America lives, the evil versions of the Justice League. We see Ultraman, we see Power Ring, Owlman, and we actually get a really nice scene because we get a parallel to Superman, to Superman's birth, where Alexander Luthor, the only superhero of Earth 3, puts his newborn son into a rocket ship and sends him away, right? So a little parallel there. Then we cut back over to the crime syndicate villains, and they're slowly being taken up by the antimatter cloud. But then Ultraman, even though in every other appearance he is a bad guy, he is evil, he's like, well, this is it. Ultraman, what are you doing? What I've done all my life. I fight to the very end. And then he just gets enveloped by the antimatter cloud. So now he's gone. Now, again, if you're reading this as a DC fan, these are characters that you've seen in dozens, if not hundreds of stories, and they're all being wiped out, right? So then Earth 3 disappears. We follow the rocket with Alexander Luthor and his wife's son, Lois Lane. It flies and ends up at Earth 1 into the old satellite headquarters of the Justice League, but it's been abandoned. Then we cut over to the headquarters of a character who we'll find out later. Well, spoiler, this is the Monitor's headquarters. We see Harbinger. Now, we should point out these characters had already been introduced in cameo appearances throughout DC Comics for 2 years leading up to the story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but they were always portrayed as siding with the villains because originally that's the character Marv Wolfman was introducing, but he changed his mind later on. And so the Monitor was selling weapons to bad guys for like 2 years. The explanation later is that he was kind of like sizing them up and trying to figure out how to defeat them or whatever. But anyway, so we see this conversation between Harbinger and Monitor. Then she transforms from her human form of Lita to Harbinger, then flies away on this mission. We cut, and again, this is a Marvel fan. I was 10 years old, and I'm reading this. What the hell is Gorilla City? Oh my God, I want to read more. Intelligent apes, like one guy's on trial. And again, the art is beautiful, which we'll talk about later. Harbinger comes and recruits one of them, disappears. Mike Poirier's imagination is tantalized. We cut over to the 30th century. Now we're in the future. We see Dawnstar from the Legion of Superheroes flying around, just kind of thinking to herself, Then she gets recruited by Harbinger. We cut back to 1942. What's going on now? We see another character named, what's her name? Firebrand. And classic Marvel, where she's narrating and telling the reader what her power is and using it for a little mundane task of just lighting the burner on a stove. I love this. She gets recruited by Harbinger, disappears. We cut back over. Now we're introduced to a superhero from Earth 5, the Charlton comics characters, and this is Blue Beetle. So this was the first time we've seen Blue Beetle in a DC comic book. So he comes in and foils a crime, and then he gets recruited by Harbinger. Then we cut over to the Arctic, and she's on her way to recruit someone else, but she gets kind of possessed by this demon. And now we see that her eyes are black, so we know she's evil. Sorry, I got to get a drink. This is, oh my God, one of my favorite characters. She goes over to, what is this? Is this Arkham Asylum? No. I don't know what it is, but.
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay. Oh, but it's Earth 2, so it's not. It's got to be something else, but it doesn't matter. So, but then she recruits.
Oh, okay. I think at the end yeah, good.
Oh, sorry. I can save it. Go ahead. We find out what it's Arkham Asylum.
Maybe, yeah. At the end, we definitely visit Arkham Asylum.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the Psycho Pirate. So freaking cool. Anyway, we'll talk more about him later. He gets recruited. Look at this. Now we're jumping around again. 45,000 years ago, Orion of Atlantis. Oh my God, if I'm not a DC fan yet, I am now. Now we're at Earth 1 of the present. We see Firestorm, who I knew from the Super Friends cartoon, fighting Icicle. The Psycho Pirate right away. Was it Icicle? Is that her name? It doesn't matter. Psycho Pirate uses his powers on her.
There's so many characters.
Yeah, I know. Good. So now the running subplot in the book is that she has a crush on Firestorm, but it's kind of like a running gag. Then we get this beautiful giant splash page of all the heroes gathered together, including others that we haven't seen yet, like Geoforce, Superman, Obsidian, Green Lantern, whoever, a bunch of other people. They're all trying to figure out what's going on. And then, of course, gratuitous violence. They get attacked by what are these? Are they called? I don't remember. Are these shadow demons? Yeah, I think they are.
I think that's what they refer to them as. Are these like shadow monsters?
Yeah,
or shadow demons.
So yeah, we have a gratuitous fight with them. They battle them, they defeat them, but then at the very end, we get the dramatic reveal of the man behind all of this recruiting, putting this team together. It's the Monitor. Who is the Monitor? We don't know, but we're going to find out. Next issue, from the dawn of man to the great disaster, crisis on infinite Earths. The DC universe will never be the same. There we go, number 1. Holy Moses! As you can tell by my enthusiasm, I absolutely love this issue, except for possibly the gratuitous fight scene with the shadow demons. I thought this, as far as setup, I thought this was incredible. Josh, what did you think of this issue?
It was really fun. I really do. It definitely piqued my interest, and I didn't know a lot of these characters. Like, I did not know who the Monitor was or who Pariah was prior to this. So, why is Pariah like showing up and then disappearing in this like disaster? I'm confused by that, and I'm intrigued. Why did this woman just burst into fire and then become a superhero, and now she's going and collecting a bunch of other superheroes from other dimensions? It's really interesting, and what I like about it is that I think that it works as a setup because it is actually setting something up later on. Like it does, all of this actually does mean something. And I think sometimes, even if it has a good setup, it doesn't have good payoff. This one, I think, works so well because what comes after is equally as fun.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think?
I pretty much agree with Josh. And one of the things, not to offend anyone, but, the issue mainly focuses on B-tier heroes like those. They're not your Batman. They're not your Superman. They're not your Green Lantern. These are heroes who are representations of them from alternative universes, from the other Earth, or they are those B-tier heroes. You got your Firebrand. You have Killer Frost, who was, the other character. I just think it's great because it's very compelling even though because they are not as recognizable, I had no idea who they were. I didn't know any of their history. I still found them engaging, and I found it intriguing for the setup. I think right now, just not with comics, but with a lot of medium, there's always such a rush to get to the next step of the story that there's no real long game planned to progress, to tease out a narrative. This does it perfectly. This is all set up without even an idea of what exactly is happening now, aside from Monitor going, your worlds are going to end. Anyone can say that in a fantasy superhero story. It doesn't really mean anything, but the build up to it and the mystery adds a certain gravitas to it, which I really appreciate. And also, because you were mentioning the artwork, George Perez is one of the best. He absolutely is.
Yeah.
And I think this issue, if you need to tell somebody why George Perez is one of the best, you simply show them this issue, or really any issue from Crisis.
I have to agree, and we have to point out that the inkers did change a few times in this series, but this first issue is by Dick Giordano, who not only was a great inker, he was also the, I think, vice president of DC at the time. And I mean, the colors are a little bit weird because it's the flexograph process, but I think Dick Giordano complements him so well. And the thing I think about George Perez and Marv Wolfman in this series is I don't think any of them are geniuses. However, anyone who's going to do a superhero comic, especially an epic, big superhero comic like this, could learn from this series. Anyone. I don't care if you're Alan Moore. I don't care if you're Neil Gaiman. If you're going to write a superhero comic, you can learn from this. And I know that at this time, or 5 years earlier, Claremont and Burns X-Men was the big thing, like the Dark Phoenix saga and all that. But I do think this ranks up there with it. I think this is peak Bronze Age superheroes for me. And as a setup, it's incredible. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say, if we're talking about who's not a genius, maybe DC Comics. They spent all that money on the Charleston characters just to go, okay, well, let's kill them all now, except for Blue Beetle.
They killed them, but then they do get there. And you know what's funny? On Slam, we haven't talked about the Charlton characters, but they do all get rebooted very soon. So maybe another podcast. But anyway, there's so much to talk about. But yes, I am in for the long haul. Again, this turned me into a DC fan.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is I've become very cynical about Bronze Age comics, but reading this makes me want to go back. Now I want to read George Perez and Marv Wolfman's Teen Titans run, because it's a good run. If you're into this type of thing, you should read that. So
one thing before we move on, this is going to be like something to as like a note for overarching like every issue we're going to be talking about. I normally don't love these huge panels with like dozens and dozens of characters in them, because a lot of the times, and we've seen this before on this podcast before with, I think, the first crossover with Earth 1 and Earth 2, when they're all meeting for the first time, we have this huge shot with all the characters standing there, and they're all just in their like straight up and down, like not doing anything poses. It almost looks like their character sheets that they would have probably at the time for their model sheets. And in every one of these issues, not one character is just like standing there like static. Everybody feels like they're doing something on the pages, and their interactions with each other, like their characters, are very fun and interesting. Like they pair up people even for just like a line that wouldn't normally feel like a good matchup, and it really works. I think
that's a good point.
We have like, this is probably my favorite interaction in this entire series right here. Whoever this is, this woman with
Firebrand?
No.
Dawnstar.
Dawnstar. So she is getting attacked by this shadow demon, and then the ape with the cape on comes and beats up the shadow person attacking her, and she goes, "Oh my god, you're an ape who can talk?" And he goes, "And you're a human with wings. Reality holds surprises for everyone." That's so great. Like, that's such a fun moment where it is kind of ridiculous that this ape that can talk and is super intelligent is walking around with these other heroes.
Sure.
But yeah, humans don't have wings. Like, it doesn't make any sense anyways. Like, I don't know. I love these small little moments with a lot of these characters. And again, they all feel like they're doing something in the scene except besides standing there, because look at all of our heroes are together. So yeah, I'm loving this.
Josh, just to add on to that, I have one umbrage with something Mike said. Maybe Marv Wolfman, he's not really a genius. Okay, I don't really like applying that term to anyone, but you just look at how methodically this was planned out. And those little tidbits, those little interactions between characters, like, come on, you can't say that isn't the quality of someone who has some talent.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he's not talented, but as the series goes, we're going to talk about some of the flaws in the plotting and the plot holes. We'll see.
What flaws? What?
But as far as attention to detail, like, you cannot fault them for effort. They're putting it was all systems go in this series. I'll agree with that. They're putting their heart and soul into this comic. And
I don't even know how you like plan something like this out. Like, how do you start with that?
Well, if you're Marv Wolfman, you don't plan it out, and that's we'll see. Right. But yeah, I know what you mean. It must have been a massive undertaking to come up with this, and that's why I say anyone can learn from this, because I've read the big crossovers. I've read Infinite Crisis. I've read Civil War.
I'm sorry.
Millennium, yeah, Legends. None of them I do think some, like, Final Crisis is better written, but nothing has the magic of this one. This is like, I don't even know what it's like. There's nothing like it. It's just incredible. I guess the closest thing you'd say is like Avengers Endgame, right? Like that, or Infinity War, that feeling of like everybody's together, the universe is at stake. That does a fairly good job of capturing it, but I still think this is better. But anyway, now we're going to jump to Crisis on Infinite Earths number 2. And I believe, Josh, you're going to handle this one.
Yeah, I'll try my best. So we're seeing a bunch of worlds here at the start that are kind of converging. So we see this like ancient times, like cave people riding around on mammoths, and there's this one guy that sees this beautiful futuristic city in the distance.
We should say that's Anthro. That's Anthro, the first boy.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. He like turns around to get the attention of the rest of his tribe, and when he turns around, it's gone. And we cut forward to the future on some sort of alien planet, and maybe it's Earth, who knows? And mammoths are now running through the city. So we're seeing some sort of weirdness is going on.
Yeah, this is Earth Legion of Superheroes, 30th century.
Okay. So then we cut over to Earth 1, I believe. This is Earth 1. And we're seeing the Joker breaking into this billionaire's mansion. And Batman swoops in and, saves the day. But as he's having this interaction with the Joker, the Flash jumps through into this manor through a portal, and we have this like warning from him that like death is coming, like impending doom, the world is going to end, and he disintegrates into dust before Batman's eyes, and he knows, just the look on his face, he realizes that something awful is happening. Then we get this kind of roster up in space on the satellite with a monitor as he's kind of explaining what's going on. And he's saying that there's this great enemy that is destroying worlds, and I've brought you all here together so you can kind of stop it by going to these convergent points and building towers, I believe, and using those towers to kind of separate the convergence. That's what I got from it, at least. Yeah,
pretty much, yeah.
They don't really explain it too well, but that's that's the gist of his plan. So they beam everybody down, I believe. Oh, we get some sort of Green Lantern. There's this strange Green Lantern subplot, and maybe you can explain it better, Mike, but I'm not even sure if it's revealed at this point, but this Green Lantern subplot is building slowly throughout these comics because the multiverse starts with the is it Oa, right? on the planet Oa with these ancient beings before they even created the lanterns. And they do something that creates the multiverse. So that's kind of what we're getting, is like pieces throughout these comics of these, like, this subplot happening on Oa.
I actually don't. I mean, they are tied into the origin of the multiverse, but I think what's happening here is just I think this is just them being attacked by, I believe it's the Anti-Monitor, but we're not sure yet.
Okay.
But there is more to the story in the issues of Green Lantern by Steve Englehart, which I just read last year. Honestly, I forget everything. So I pretty much only know as much as you because I forget it all.
Okay. Yeah, so some of the things are a little weird and iffy, but Batman shows up at the Daily Bugle so he can warn Superman as to what's happening. And as this happens, Pariah shows up and he's like, the world's gonna end. Oh no, what's going on? And then he realizes he's starting to disappear again, and he's like, uh-oh, something worse is happening somewhere else, so that at least you guys aren't gonna die immediately. And he just like poofs out of there. Batman and Superman are like, hey, what the fuck is going on? So we cut over to this tower. This is the future, I believe that this one is. Let me see here.
This is now the world of Commandy, the last boy. We've already met the first boy. Gotcha. Now we meet the last boy. Yeah,
makes sense. So yeah, we see. I'm assuming this is Commandy here. So this first group, which is Superman, Ape with the Cape.
Yeah, Superman Earth 2, we should point out.
Superman Earth 2, Ape with the Cape, and then the Flying Girl, Moonshine.
King Sala and Dawnstar.
Okay, Dawnstar. Yeah. So they're here activating it or something. And again, these shadow demons show up and they realize that they're they're easier to defeat now for some reason.
Plot armor.
Right. And we cut back to the satellite base, and we're seeing Alexander Luthor kind of aging rapidly. Something strange is going on with him and his birth. They go to this civilization, and most of the heroes go into the city to see what's going on. And what's his name? This
Orion?
guy.
Oh, Psycho Pirate?
Psycho Pirate shows up. Pirate,
yeah.
And he's also there with Pariah, and they're able to kind of defeat Psycho Pirate for a quick second.
But he uses his power to change Pariah's emotion in a beautiful sequence by George Perez.
Right.
Then he leaves him, and then he gets blasted by Orion. And then what happens? Then Orion tries to use his magic to. I don't remember. What does he try to do here? Is he trying to?
I think he's using the thing to protect them from the shadow people, right?
The shadow demons? I don't remember.
I don't quite remember. It's not super important. The big thing to take away from what's going on here is that they take Psycho Pirate. Psycho Pirate is taken away during this conflict.
Right.
And he is in this like nothingness, this universe where it's pitch black. And we're not really sure what's going on with him right now, but he's speaking to this person that is trying to destroy all of these realities. And we have this really fun moment where Psycho Pirate is kind of like talking back to him, and this menace kind of like takes away his face, and he's not even able to speak to him. And then he asks him like, you're going to help me. If you choose to help me, then you will survive. If not, you'll die. Okay, answer now. And he gives him back his mouth at that point to say that he will join him. So yeah, we get a little bit more exposition from Pariah as to what's going on. And it's revealed to us that the Monitor is actually a bad guy. And they were led to believe that the Monitor sent them there, and what they're doing is not good because Pariah is kind of talking about how dangerous the Monitor is, right?
But that's not true, though. No,
it's not true, but that's what happens, right?
No, the Monitor is still a good guy. What's happening is,
but this
Harbinger has been turned evil by the shadow demons. The conversation with what's his name, Psycho Pirate, is with the Anti-Monitor.
Right, and that's why but Pariah is saying this, and they think that the Monitor is evil because he's talking about the evil Monitor. And that's why they say then the Monitor lied.
Did I miss that? Where does it say that? Well, anyway.
The Monitor lied. He lied. What?
Oh, yeah, but he's not evil, though.
Lying's pretty evil. Okay.
I guess maybe I took it. Maybe I took it as that they misunderstood, and that was hinting at the fact that there were two monitors. But maybe I misread that.
Yeah, no, I think it's also confusing because what happens is Harbinger's with the Monitor, then it says meanwhile, all of a sudden she's with the Anti-Monitor, and it's to be honest, it's confusing.
Right. Okay.
And so she is evil, and she's playing both sides, basically. That's what's happening. So it gets kind of confusing. And at the end, this conversation reveals that the Monitor knows that she's going to betray him, which is a little bit of weak plotting, in my opinion. It does get a little bit confusing. And that's why I think this issue, the ending is not as tantalizing as the last one, because to be honest, I'm a little bit confused about what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I would have almost preferred it like the twist is that the Monitor is evil or whatever. Like that's the reveal.
Sure.
They're stuck on this Earth now with no way out, and they feel like they've been tricked onto this doomed planet.
That would have been, you're right. That would have been great. Even if they're all wrong, you're right.
Yeah.
You're totally right. That'd be a good ending.
This one, I don't think it was as strong. Mm-hmm. There were some bits that I really, really liked. I love the stuff with Joker and Batman at the beginning, the Flash showing up, and then him meeting up with Superman. Whoa, like that was fantastic. That I don't know why. I just really love the writing and the dialogue. Like just it really worked for me. And then when it loses me is these weird subplots that are unclear as to what the Monitor is sending the heroes out to do.
Right.
Because it doesn't feel like it's really saving anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it feels like, okay, well, we gotta fill some issues. We gotta have something to do. Mm-hmm. So we'll come up with this temporary plot, even though we know it's not going to be the final plot. That's what I feel like it is.
Yeah. I almost... Yeah, I don't know how they would have fixed that. Like maybe even just making their task a little bit more clear to the reader. Like you have to go to these places and figure out where all of these anomalies are happening. So they have to go to these unfamiliar places and then, like, something.
Sure.
It just doesn't, it kind of falls apart in the end a little bit, not knowing kind of what they're supposed to even really be doing there.
That's true. Adam, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because with this one, it does seem a little bit anticlimactic as a cliffhanger. And in that way, I think reading it as a trade or as a consecutive 12-issue run is a lot stronger because I never really noticed that weakness until you pointed it out. To me, again, I think that's the advantage of reading this retrospectively, not at the time it was coming out or actually consuming it issue by issue. With that, it is kind of an odd placeholder leading over to the next issue. I don't want to say it goes exactly nowhere because I do think there's a purpose to the tower and even the misdirection. But I think as you read it as a straightforward narrative without any breaks between issues, it doesn't become as jarring. Also, I just want to say, no one seems to like this guy Pariah. Who would have thought? No one would like a guy named Pariah.
Yeah.
I think he's okay. I like him. I like him.
Pariah. Should we trust him?
Yeah, I know. A little on the nose. As well call them bad guy or Decepticon. Anyway,
I don't think we should trust these Decepticons.
Yeah. Now I gotta ask one question. What do you guys like? Again, Josh and I were both Marvel fans first, but is this not a great way to just engulf you in DC lore. Like we have Anthro in ancient times, then we have Atlantis, then we have the Legion of Superheroes, then we have the Joker and Batman, then we have the Flash. What a way, right? To just dive in and you're just introduced to everything at once. Like, don't you think it's just brilliantly done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I think that the premise is really great. I think that it could have been again, if their task was a little bit more clear, we could have maybe divided up the issues with like exploring those places a little bit more.
Sure.
To kind of get a better feel. Because we also explore Atlantis for a little bit at times, and when they insert those parts, it's kind of just like a page. Sure. And then it's gone. I almost wish that we were like following the through line of like one group of people, one at a time.
Sure. And
then catching up. But again, reading this, like Adam was saying, reading this as a trade paperback, like reading it as a whole, is much easier, I think, than issue by issue, because it does feel a little strange. I wouldn't be counting down the days till the next one came out after reading this one, like I would have for the first. This cliffhanger is not as concise or as tantalizing. I probably would have picked up issue 3, but it wouldn't have been like pacing around trying to think of what's going
Batman
on.
now. I mean, you want to read it because it's got Batman now.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though? Those parts were great. So
yeah,
they were.
And I do want to say, to Josh's point too, there is something to be said about showing these universes that are going to be eliminated. And DC, again, the genius of DC publishing executives going, you see these worlds? Really nice, right? Well, they're all dead now. You can't see them anymore. Atlantis, it's gone.
It is like I said, it's ironic because it's the end of an era, but I think it really got so many people into DC, so that's what makes it ironic. But anyway, okay, why don't we jump to number 3, the first issue that I actually read, and Adam, you're going to tell us what happened in this one.
Okay, so we opened up with the Monitor upon his gigantic gold throne as he's examining Alexander Luthor. So this is the son of Alexander and Lois Luthor, and he's rapidly aging. So Harbinger is kind of like moving around, hearing his exposition as he's talking about this exponentially growing boy. And, he's pretty much ignoring her. At least that's what she suspects. So that gets her to think, does he know something? That I'm performing the bidding of his enemy? Well, let's go over to the enemy and find out. So she zaps through reality and meets up with the big bad, who will be revealed a little bit later, and Psycho Pirate. There's some exposition between the trio of them, basically pointing to the fact that the Luthor child will present a threat, or could potentially present a threat, and therefore he must be eliminated. So I do like this because we're connecting a lot of story threads that at first seemed a little bit ancillary or unconnected. Now it's showing, nope, there is a through line. And then we get to the next section, which I love the contrast of this very dark black page to this very busy kinetic page of the Flash. And the Flash is running through Earth 1's future. He is basically seeing the cataclysm that has occurred because he's running so fast. And I do believe this is the case here. He's traveling through time because it doesn't bind him because he's so quick.
Well, not yet.
Okay, but that will be the case, because there's a little bit of, this is where it can be a little bit disjointed, because there is the whole notion of we're seeing a juncture between past events and future events. So the timelines get a little bit complex. Once you read the issues, it becomes clearer. But
the one thing I have to point out that I love is that the last time we saw the Flash, it was a vision by the Batman. Now this is first person narration of the Flash in his present, which I think is really interesting. Right?
Absolutely. No. And then we have the big title page as well. The title of this issue is Oblivion Upon Us, as we're seeing what's happening upon Earth 1 on July 1985. Great year, where, we are seeing all these heroes within a city, and just seeing that they are not able to surpass this force that's happening, this city destroying force. So we're getting some great action shots. And, I will say one thing. If you want to have a bunch of heroes doing really impressive visual things, I mean, this is why this is the artist for you. You cannot get better than George Perez just for having these kinetic, busy shots. They don't seem cluttered. They don't seem too chaotic. The chaos is purposeful. Everyone is showing stuff. He even got Black Lightning taking care of stuff. Love that Black Lightning. Such an OG. He's great. And as we're cutting to the heroes, helping people in damaged buildings, trying to rescue people from rubble, we're seeing, of course, a great nod for Wolfman and for Perez here, because we're seeing the Titans there. And, of course, being a book that they were really well known for, this is a little great homage to that, where Superman then comes in. And this is Superman of Earth One comes in to help out. And again, just assess what is happening. He's helping protect particular people, Wonder Girl, for example. And then in addition to Superman, Batman's here. And they're all just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Buildings are collapsing. It seems like there's all sorts of phenomena occurring. And there's a lot of actual need for consoling going on. There's this great shot where Superman is embracing Starfire, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what? Yeah, I know the proportions can be a little bit off, but there is this sense of pathos where you really have these strong superheroes needing to be supported by one another, because what they're encountering on this world is just so devastating. Well, in the midst of this, all of a sudden, it's the Flash. He appears as a vision, and this is one of the most iconic scenes. He says, "Batman, thank heaven, I relaxed my internal vibrations." Yada, 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 scientific mumbo jumbo. But it brought me back to this time. Something's happening in the future. Everything's unraveling, fraying at the seams. Flash, calm down. I have to speak to you. Oh, no, I feel so strange. What is happening to me? And then he disappears. He disappears into this disintegrating bolt of lightning in this really great image. Pure magic.
Kirby crackle.
Oh, the Kirby crackle. The Kerbal crackling happened. Kerbal crackling. I'll name it that. Kerbal crackling. Then the next scene, we go from the contrast of all those heroes to some bad guys, because then we have Brainiac flying through his patented skull-shaped ship. Of course, it has to look like him because he's on brand. He's flying around. There's a bit of exposition happening here. Basically, he is detecting an anomaly and he has to go investigate. And then we cut across time. We go to spring 1944, where there is a war happening.
I love it.
It's so amazing, this displacement where we have these great panels, this great tile of panels showing this battle, and then it pulls back to reveal one of those towers erected there. Now, the actual characters are escaping me, but these World War II characters are actually part of World War II comics that DC bought the right for. So again, it's connecting all of these different universes across genres, just not superhero books.
Yeah, like GI Combat, Haunted Tank. I can't remember the other ones, but yeah, brilliant stuff. Again, tying everything together. It's beautiful. I love it.
It really is, and it's getting a sense of how all these different realities and worlds are really connecting. In the midst of this battle and the confusion of these soldiers, then we do have some other characters come in, some superheroes with magnetic powers. Basically, what they're doing is they're assisting our heroes, our good old American troops, to take care of those vile not American soldiers that they're fighting against, those nondescript soldiers, and also trying to explain what the heck is going on. Blue Beetle is there. He's also trying to do some investigation along with some various other characters. It's just great seeing these various characters interacting with each other. There's even a really touching sequence at the bottom of page 13 where there's a hero who is talking about, you got to have a place for flowers to grow. This great section of humanity and characterization for, I think it's Sergeant Rock.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Sergeant Rock. Yeah.
And Anyway, the battle ensues. There's explosions surrounding the tower, and now Rock and his remaining troops try to defend the tower against the opposing army. I'm just going to call them the Germans because I'm imagining they're evil German soldiers. I pronounce that every other way except for soldier, but regardless. Then that ominous blue light that we saw in the previous issues that enveloped the world starts to develop around the soldiers, and these dark shadows also appear. So even though Sergeant Rock and his company are firing against everything, the other soldiers are being enveloped by that light. More shadow people escape from this tower and do battle. And despite the aid of the heroes, it's no good. They are overpowering them. Even
Snow good.
No, it's no good in that snow, eh? Even Blue Beetle is getting the tar kicked out of him.
Mm.
But he is, and this is the one thing I do like, because as you mentioned, this is his first comic book appearance in DC continuity, and even though he's just a genius, a philanthropist, and a very fit guy, he's like doing somersaults and cartwheels, evading the grasp of the shadow people, which is pretty good. It all ends with him pressing a button and them zapping out of that reality, where we're getting this contrast between other towers existing in other realities, a great polarized shot that exists on page, which page was that again? 19.
19?
Oh, or no, pardon me, 18.
18? Okay, yeah, here.
Yeah. So just really great work of paneling there. The great disaster is happening. And this is the thing that we're pointing to, the great disaster. There's not a lot of information given about what exactly it is, but it's been building up and it sounds very ominous. This is more than just a superhero wanting to take over the world or destroy the world. The great disaster really does seem like the end of everything. The skies are on fire. They appear red. There's electrical storms. Superman from Earth 2 is looking on as he's trying to consult with other heroes. And Ape with a Cape, I think he actually goes up to Commandy, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, and he has a little talk with him. I know he actually has a name, but I'm just going to call him Ape with a Cape because I love that.
King Solomon or Sulliver. I'm wrong. It's Soliver.
No, it's Ape with a Cape.
It's Ape with a Cape, I think.
But then he zoops out of reality. Oop. Well, it looks like everything is changing. People are being displaced from time, space, and reality. And then we cut to a town in Coyote, Texas, 1879. It's a Western, so we're getting some of those great old Western characters from DC lore. We're seeing a lot of them. I believe Jonah Hex is the only one that I've recognized of the entire group.
Is awesome. Yep.
But again, much like with the World War II heroes, we are seeing this connection, establishing these genre characters who, again, come across this tower, which is embedded outside of a mine, and they meet some heroes and some ones I recognize. There's Green Lantern, there's Cyborg, there's Firebrand, and there's others, and more dialogue, more exchange. Basically, the shadow people appear once again and perform battle. It appears futile. Humans, superhumans, they're all passing away. They're being attacked by the shadow people. And again, nothing can be done. That white light is enveloping the sky again, despite the fact that characters are trying to ride away. They are all being enveloped by the white light, destroying everything. Nothing can escape. Nothing and nobody. And then we cut back to the 30th century. We are in the Legion of Superhero time frame, I believe. And
Yes.
More shenanigans are afoot as we are seeing characters also here trying to fight against this white enveloping light, but it also destroys their world. And we're seeing this montage as more and more realities and more worlds are enveloped and destroyed. Now, as what we do is we pan back and we see the Monitor is, as per his name, monitoring all of this. He's doing a good job at that. There's a reason they didn't call him the Doer. Because you have a more appropriate name. It's like, what is he doing? He's monitoring. He's doing a good job. Anyway, Monitor is saying, instead of days, only hours remain. The Earths are doomed. Still, my machines are in place. My agents at their post. It is time for my plan to begin. when he hears from behind, "Wrong, old fool. It is time for you to die." And who's there but Harbinger, about to blast him with some crackling electricity. I argue this goes against the ending of the previous issue. It does have a payoff here. And even if it does kind of make it surprising, like, why would Monitor say he knew or sensed that she was going to betray him, and then he seems surprised that she's betraying him? To me, there's still a payoff here. A lot of stuff happened in this issue, and to me, I think this is the first stage of the major conflict. We have the Great Crisis being named, the Great Disaster being named, I should say.
Well, wait, I have to intervene. The Great Disaster is the name of this of what happened in Commandy's comic book. It has no connection to Crisis, actually.
Oh, because I know in Infinite Crisis and then in Countdown, they would end up referring to various incidents again. And I know you love Countdown being brought up, as we all do, but still.
No. But yeah, it's totally different. It's like the unexplained reason that the Earth is the way it is in Commandy's book, which is like in the 25th century or something.
Well, they explain it. It's giant towers.
I think it's a different thing, but yeah. I just don't, because I already misnamed King Sullivan as King Solomon, so I don't want any of our millions of listeners to tune out because we got something wrong. So that's why I had to
going to make them tune out. Yes, but
yeah.
But I love this issue, Mike. I know you said this was your first you read. What's your take on it?
Oh my God! I mean, even though it's number 3, I think it's brilliant. We start off with this character who I don't even know, but I'm intrigued by, this Alexandra Luthor who's advancing in age. The almost experimental artwork of George Perez. Again, this is primitive technology, 80s, but he's drawing with like blue ink and red ink, right, to create these computer images. Then we cut over to the Flash in the future. Then we see the Teen Titans. Again, at this time reading this, I barely knew these characters, but beautifully drawn disaster film imagery, right, of this building falling apart. Like, I love. And then we see Superman and we see Batman, and then the redesigned Brainiac, and then we're jumping back to World War II again, being introduced to characters that I'd never heard of before I read this. And this issue, it's kind of almost, it's, if you look at the first 3 issues as one continuous, if you're reading it all at once, the fact that number 2 is a little bit weaker, it doesn't really matter because it's kind of like arguably repetitious. We're jumping around, but I think this issue was great. I think the art was great. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think I read this all at once as like a trade. So this is almost my first time thinking about it as an issue.
Sure.
On its own with this recap. And yeah, it's pretty good. I feel like thinking about it as a separate issue, these endings of like these 2 brand new characters, like, oh no, this guy I don't know anything about or don't give 2 shits about might die. It's like, okay, don't really care a whole lot.
Great point.
It maybe if him, the Monitor, being distracted is now causing these places, like he can't stop it with whatever the fuck the towers are supposed to do. And now we end with all of these worlds like dying and some characters that we actually know of at this point like disappearing. That I feel like would be a great way to end it. I almost feel like this having to jump back to these people we don't know is kind of a little like, brings it down a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. I love Marv Wolfman, but yeah, he's putting too much faith in these characters that we don't know. It becomes melodramatic. Like, it's time for you to die. But you're right. Who are these people? We don't care. Yeah. The other thing I really want to emphasize, this is very important, guys. You see the panels of the Monitor reacting to Harbinger in the last page? You see that? Take note. I want you to zoom in, Josh. This is very important for our viewers. Look at the shape of the panels. Round. It's going to come back later. I'll explain. Anyway, okay. That's all I want to say.
Is this...
I know where he's going because there's it's not exactly a controversy, but people have made it one. But anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. Is this all being watched on a monitor?
It could be, but I don't want to spoil it. But we'll see. But
monitor.
but I also have to point out another thing I love. Again, it's hitting you over the head, but the fact that Jonah Hex says, "Don't you remember the Greek costume on that hombre?" It's the same one that we saw on another guy who called himself a lantern or something, only he wasn't no colored man. Okay, it's not great dialogue, but I like the fact that they're acknowledging that these characters have met in other issues of Justice League and DC Comics Presents or whatever. I just love it, and you can crap on continuity all you want, but back in these days, one good thing was these guys grew up reading these comics, and they remembered them all and they loved them. And so, of course, they're going to reference them and keep all the continuity tight. Like, I just love it. I don't know. I think it's great. But anyway, I guess we got more comics to talk about, so we should probably jump to the next one, right?
I mean, and most importantly, Johnny Thunder's here.
Yes.
Doing whatever he's doing.
Johnny Thunder 2, even though chronologically he's 1. But yeah. Okay, so now Crisis on Infinite Earths number 4. Great
spoilers.
This is a great cover. The Death of the Monitor. We're only 4 issues in and he's already dead. But I love this. like the whatever that is, like the screens all paneling down. Like, what a great freaking cover. I love it. Pariah reacting. It's beautiful. Oh, and by the way, we should point out this issue has a different inker. It's no longer Dick Giordano. It's Mike DiCarlo, another Italian. What's going on here, guys? Anyway. But yeah, Mike DiCarlo, most famous for inking Batman in the late 80s over Jim Aparo. Solid inker. So we open up with a lot of people really like the scene, and I like it too, but it's really important because Supergirl, who, spoiler alert, ends up dying later. This is one of the scenes that she gets the most dialogue in. So we really get to see like a really cool, just down-to-earth interaction between her and Batgirl. 2 characters that interacted sometimes, but it's just nice to see them just having a little chat. And then I was just about to say it's like a conversation you have before you go into battle. And then sure enough, we cut over and we see an older style plane flying into the antimatter cloud. It's just great. I love it. Then we cut over. Okay, one of the coolest cameos in the whole series on page 3 at the bottom, none other than John Constantine. Like, holy Moses. We should remind everyone that this is during Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's paralleling that series. We're seeing what's his name? The guy who Jason, the guy who turns into the demon Etrigan. I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. Jason Blood. Yep. Then we cut over to Pariah. Pariah's on an Earth. This is kind of like, again, now they're having fun. This is an Earth we've never seen before. Earth, what do they call it? Is it 5? I think it's 5. We see a superhero named Lord Volt. And then we see his wife. What's her name? Can't remember her name. It's been Lady Quark. And then they're trying to protect their Earth. But then he gets destroyed. But then Pariah's like, well, you know what? Maybe even though I'm disappearing, maybe I could save one person. So he grabs a hold of her and they both disappear before the Earth gets destroyed. I love it. It's a great scene. And then in a complete plot hole that ignores the ending of last issue, Monitor is A-okay, hanging out, no sign of Harbinger. I don't know if you guys noticed that. But Marv Wolfman completely forgot about the cliffhanger of the last issue. Now, would you like me to talk about what the curved panels are? Okay, I'll tell you. It was okay. I know you're excited. So basically, they realized just as it was about to go to print, oh crap, we completely forgot about it. Both the writer and artist. So like, okay, I know how we can explain it. If we draw the borders to be curved, that will make people think that she's watching it on a monitor. Because in a comic book, a curved border usually denotes a TV screen or sometimes a flashback. Mm-hmm. So that's why they did that. They could have done a better job, but they probably only had like an hour to do it. So anyway. So yeah, we cut back over here. Now we're seeing – now this is one of the weaknesses of the book is that Marv Wolfman tried to launch a whole bunch of new superheroes. None of them really went anywhere, but this is the introduction of the new Dr. Light, who ended up joining the Justice League for like 20 minutes and then disappearing. But so she's Japanese, I believe. Yeah, a scientist. We get a little bit of her origin. We cut back over to Alexander Luthor on the satellite. And now and then we cut over to Pariah and Anti-Monitor, who are then joined by Red Tornado, who's been recruited because they need him for Anti-Monitor's plan. Then we cut over to Earth 2, and we see the heroes that we were with last time, Firestorm and Icicle. Then we're introduced to some characters we haven't seen yet, like Vandal Savage, who's immortal, and our pal, the Shining Knight, right, who we know from the Seven Soldiers of Victory, right, and we beat on Slam. That's why we did
hero
it.
ever.
Yep. So they're kind of dealing with everything, the same thing that's going on. It's kind of, again, objectively, it is sort of repetitious, but I just like touching base with all these different worlds and timelines. I think it's so cool. Then we see, Dr. Light shows up, right, to save the day. She helps
right
here. Huh?
Yeah. So yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay,
Forgot.
Okay. We see the Teen Titans kind of just zipping through here. And then now we're on page 17, and we still haven't touched back to the ending of the last issue, but that's okay. They're kind of just doing their thing. They're protecting the towers. Good art. Everything's cool. Then we finally, on page 21, we finally get the payoff for last issue, where now Harbinger has come to destroy the Monitor. So he shoots her. She shoots him with a laser blast. He falls, and the Pariah's like, "Oh no!" He's kind of trying to save him, and then he's like screaming. And then we realize now, Earth 1, Earth 2 are now disappearing, and we see the antimatter cloud enveloping everything, which is something we're going to see still more of. But at the end of the issue, it says to be continued with a question mark. But we know there's still 8 more issues to go, so we know we're not done. But again, going back to what you were saying, Josh, you read this all as one issue. I've read it as chapters, but reading it again, it's kind of like, it's kind of the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind it. I still love it. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, it does get a little repetitive at times. It's a bit strange too to think about this like great disappearing. It just seems to be happening like over and over again. Like I'm a little bit confused as to like, is it slowly creeping?
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Would you like to know a huge flaw in the plot, and it defies physics? One of the ideas Marv Wolfman had was that the antimatter cloud is affecting all time periods at the same time. So if there's if there's an antimatter cloud coming towards me in 2024, it's also coming to the heroes in 1944. What Marv Wolfman didn't think of is that if it destroys the Earth in 1944, then I'm no longer here. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It only makes sense in a comic book because you want to see the current heroes in peril, and you want to see the World War II heroes, and you want to see the Atlantis heroes. If you would have said, we're going to send shadow demons to every era, that makes sense. But saying that we're going to destroy reality at all time periods at the same time makes no sense at all.
Yeah, it's almost as if like maybe they should have had these towers show up, and that's what's going to be causing like the disappearances. Or something, and that's why they're sending it. Yeah, it's a little bit strange. I don't know. Nothing really happens in this one a whole lot that changes by the end of the book, besides Monitor dying. It does feel a little bit repetitive to me, but it was fine. Like nothing also like dragged either, if that makes sense. Like it.
Sure.
But it was an okay issue.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing egregious, but just to Josh's point, you could have just added one more page to the end of the other issue with Harbinger just having shot down Monitor, and it would have had the same effect. Especially because there's this displacement of time where some worlds were shown being enveloped in the antimatter clouds, and then some participants who appeared to be enveloped in it were fine later on, but then they got enveloped again later anyhow. So it just seemed like diminishing returns with this. Nothing egregious again, just, it just didn't seem to progress anything that much.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. We also have to point out Mike DiCarlo, great inker, but not quite as good as Dick Giordano. So the art is great, but it's not as good as the first 3 issues, I don't think.
I want to do a drinking game of every panel in which Pariah is crying or looks distraught.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I do love George Perez, but he tends to use the expression of someone's eyes bugging out and their mouth being agape a lot, and you'll see it a lot in this series.
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay. I mean, I'm not really. I mean, I'm just kind of nitpicking at this point. But yeah,
that's what people on podcasts do. That's the whole point of this.
yeah.
I do really love these last 2 pages, though. This is definitely a stronger ending to kind of leave off. Sorry, at the end, I love this, like seeing these lines of planets as they're slowly kind of evaporating into this nothingness, and then from the nothingness, we just slowly see like black. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
really love that.
Okay, so I guess that's all we can say about number 4.
Yeah, I'll quickly recap number 5.
Sure.
Yeah, so it looks like Psychopirate. I can't believe I'm about to say. It looks like Psychopirate is manipulating Red Tornado into doing their bidding. But Red Tornado is kind of like, listen, I'm not a machine or a man, so you can't really mess with me. I think that's what that little conversation was about. What is this? Okay. So Pariah looks over and sees this woman, and she was Harbinger. So she's turned back into her original form after killing a Monitor, and we realize that the Monitor has fulfilled his prophecy of turning into a living monitor, and his essence, I guess, is inside of a computer screen. Or maybe he's pre-recorded this or something. But he shows up to be like, "This was my plan all along. Now that I'm more powerful now than I could have been before. Whatever, who cares?" Alexander Luthor is in full gold armor now, and he's like, "Hey, I'm ready to fight this bad guy in the Monitor's place." So we cut over back to the Flash, who's been kidnapped and brought to this timeline, and Psychopirate is like making him extremely scared by changing his emotions. We cut over to this news reporter who is covering this convergence where all of these different timelines. It's really cool panel. I love this. Where there's a giant, like a pair of giant T-Rexes fighting in this city, and in the foreground we have like horse and carriages, and we see like old school biplanes and spaceships and rockets flying all in the same like little area. It's really interesting. So what's going on here now? They bring a bunch of people up to the satellite at this point. They don't really explain how or why, but a bunch of these people are now here that they've gathered together to fight. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the Monitor has turned into an energy netherverse that is preserving all, I believe, Earth 1 and 2. Yeah. The entire universe is contained in this netherverse now. That's why they're all together, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's cool though that they're all together though. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting actually. So they're all meeting up at this satellite to figure out how they're going to fight this guy. Here's where we're kind of seeing that it's been preserved as Earth 1 and 2 kind of being combined. Alexander is explaining this to everybody and to us, the readers. We're seeing a bunch of little cameos in the background of what's going on. And then what is going on here? Oh, is this where we also see again another little moment of Oa, and we realize that the Green Lanterns don't have their powers right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because their leaders are they've all been like locked away. Superman punches a saber-toothed tiger. What else is going on here? Yeah, it's just kind of a bunch of little moments of people dealing with the fact that all of these different time periods are kind of together on one Earth. So there's cave people in the Bat Cave. There's dinosaurs in the cities. We're seeing all of these different heroes from different times teaming up. Well, we get another moment where the Ice Woman and Fireboy.
Icicle, Firestorm.
Killer
Yeah.
Frost. Everyone,
Why do I keep calling
give
her
her
Icicle?
respect. It's
Oh my
Killer
God,
Frost.
I'm so embarrassed. It's Killer Frost.
Everyone's favorite villain, Killer Frost. Yes.
So they're hanging out. And what's going on with Red Tornado? I can't even remember why they need Red Tornado.
Oh, they don't. They just but they tell us they need Red Tornado and they never use them. Isn't that great?
Okay, so he just nopes out of here at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like, see ya. What is going on? Oh, Red Tornado shows up here, correct? For some reason, and there's a storm going on. I don't know. Oh, right, he crashes back down to Earth, and they all presume him to be lost forever. And I think they have to do like tests and stuff on him.
Yeah, he comes back later, but
sure.
Yeah, we're basically seeing all these heroes like that's what's her name, Zatanna, Thunderbolt, Zargon the Sorcerer, Dr. Fate. Again, these are characters who haven't been in the book yet, so it's kind of exciting. The Earth 1 or the Earth 2 Flash, Johnny, what's his name?
Wildcat.
Thunder. Oh, I love it. Wildcat, his legs are crushed. Like
Robin Hood. What's this guy's name again?
Robin Hood.
Oh, that's Green. That's the original Green Arrow.
Original Green Arrow. It's just, again, what's his name? George Perez is never pulling any punches. Also, notice the way he draws the Superman of Earth 1 and Earth 2 with slightly different builds, slightly different cape sizes, slightly different S's. Like, I just love him. He's great.
Yeah, it's fun. So this bad guy, he's like, guess what, Flash, you idiot. All of these superheroes that are trying to stop me are on this satellite all together right now, and I'm just going to explode the satellite, and there's nothing you can do. And the Flash is like, if you're so brave, why don't you show your face? And he's like, I'm not going to be tricked by you. Like, I'm not hiding my face because I don't care. Look, I'll turn the lights on. And see this guy, and they're like all completely shocked because everybody knows who this guy is, but he's also the Monitor. He's the evil anti-version of the Monitor. He looks kind of cool, I guess, for a comic bad guy. It's fun, new, unique design. So then we see more of this. It turns out that the disappearing thing is still happening for some reason. Now, even on this planet where it's combined. Oh, I think what happens is he says that if I destroy the satellite, then the Earths won't be hidden anymore. That's what it is. If he destroys the satellite, they won't be stuck in this pocket dimension, and I can destroy the combined Earth now. And that's what we see at the end. After the explosion of that satellite, Earth X over here is being destroyed.
This is all the quality comics heroes: Uncle Sam, Phantom Lady, Black Condor, Human Bomb, and Light Ray. Awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. We didn't cover them on Slam, unfortunately, but who knows? Maybe there'll be a revival one day. But anyway, so I don't know. I mean, again, I guess as I'm rereading these and reviewing them, the issues are running together. I'll give you that. It's a lot of the same thing. But it is nice to see some of the characters we haven't seen. You know, I got to point out there's one scene in this book. It's actually the worst scene so far that I've read, because we got to remember Marv Wolfman is writing every single DC character, and it doesn't necessarily mean that he is the right person to be drawing them. So if you jump to page 10, there's a scene where Warlord is shooting his mouth off at the very bottom, and then all of a sudden Phantom Stranger is there, who we just read about in our last episode. He's like, Travis Morgan, you are called the Warlord. Think like a leader of men. We must band together. But then we see the Creeper in the foreground. Where'd you pop up from? You weren't here a second ago. But I am here now, Creeper. That is all that matters. Well, you know my name, but how? Well, I've not read many Creeper comics, but that's not at all what Creeper, to me, would sound like. So that's just an example of possibly biting off more than he could chew. He's kind of just writing everyone a little bit generically at that point, I think. But other than that, I thought this issue was fine. Adam, what'd you think?
Okay, so Yes, very similar to the previous two issues, but I think this is all the kinetic buildup. Again, as like a full read, I think you need to have these big action sequences to kind of get the chaotic view of what's happening. It does seem disjointed, it seems fractured, and I think on purpose to show the severity of all these time frames and all these worlds bleeding together and fracturing. We're even seeing that with the panel layout, even on the page we're looking at right now, where panels aren't perfectly symmetrical, but kind of bleed or like shift into one another. And I think for getting that sense of that chaotic energy across, not only is the visual storytelling great, I think even the planning out of it works.
Mhm.
What felt a little bit too much, I think, as an individual reading for the previous issue, I think here works well as a continuum. And we're going to see that break a little bit in the next issue. But I thought this is why this is actually a better whole read than it is a sequential read or a serial read, because I think as a whole volume, it goes along better because you get a greater sense of that urgency happening, where it gets disrupted if you had to wait a month for the next issue to come out.
Sure. Okay. Now, what did you think about the inking by Jerry Ordway? Did you notice the difference?
It was very dark.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it does
that
seem
is generic I can get. Okay.
It does seem a lot darker. Maybe it's just the scans, but everything.
I think it's the scan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It does, because it does feel a little bit, maybe a little bit more muddied in this version flipping through. But yeah, again, that could be the.
I think the different. I think for me, Dick Giordano is very inky. Like it's like you can feel the ink, whereas I think Jerry Ordway is more graceful, almost like, I mean, I know he's not using a pencil, but it feels more fluid and feathery. That's how I would describe his inking. He's also a better artist than Dick Giordano is, so he's basically giving more of his personality to the art, I think, than any other inker has so far, but it does look great. I still think George Perez is better inking himself or being inked by Dick Giordano. Or there's another one I really like. I can't remember his name at the moment, but this is solid inking from Jerry Ordway, so I think it's really good. But again, as we're reading this, again, 40 years after it came out, it's clear that the series is getting repetitious and there's not a lot happening, but it's still exciting in my opinion. The reveal of the Anti-Monitor is great. However, it's confusing because he calls himself the Monitor, which might throw off readers, right? Like, well, yeah, it's just confusing, right?
So there is a theory that the Monitor was actually going to be the villain and that this was some sort of new form he was going to manifest into, but there was creative differences and they decided, no, this has to be a separate character.
Oh, really? Is that true?
That's what I've heard. So take that with a grain of salt. But to me, that makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. Well, yeah.
In subsequent reprints, I believe they've actually changed the text to read "I am the Anti-Monitor" rather than "I am the Monitor."
Interesting.
That is very interesting, because that would also explain why the Monitor was sending all of our heroes down to set up these pillars, and why they would think at the start that they were being betrayed and tricked. And maybe the dialogue at the last minute was changed for these moments of like, let's not have it revealed that he has, deceived our superheroes.
Well, one thing for sure is that Marv Wolfman did make up a lot of this as he went along. So
interesting.
Yeah. So
was it also deliberate that they made the shadow of this character look like Darkseid?
Oh, yes. That was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not for me. I don't know. I thought it was just a coincidence. But.
Okay. Because it looks every time. Let me see if I could find it here. Maybe he doesn't show up in this one in silhouette, but I feel like every time that he shows up, it's just Darkseid in silhouette.
Interesting.
Like it really looks like him, and I was like, oh. Like here, like look at this. Is this not Darkseid? Just even in this one tiny little thin panel.
Mm-hmm.
No, I read at one point that was meant to be a red herring because they wanted to throw off the idea of who the actual villain was.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. I think that's actually a strong point for the series doing that.
Yeah, and he's not introduced until after the reveal of who this big bad guy really is. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
So I guess that's all we can say about number 5.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about number 6. Who's doing number 6? Is that you, Josh?
Well, that would be me.
Oh, Adam, right. Okay, Adam, tell us number 6.
At last, the Anti-Monitor. So here we have a continuation from the scene with the Anti-Monitor. We have Psycho Pirate pleading with him because basically he just wants to do some bad stuff. And then there's Flash, who's just freaking out. He's slowly starting to regain his emotional control after the manipulation from the pirate, but he is still on the floor, indisposed, as Anti-Monitor does pontificate a bit, talking about what he needs. And what he needs is to search for a replacement. So he's really talking about finding some other specimens that he can use for his nefarious plans. He's giving insinuations about who it might be, but we'll see more about it as the issue goes on. Basically, he wants the ultimate power to be his, and in order to do that, he grants part of his powers over to the Psycho Pirate, where he is able to see 3 Earths which are left for him to conquer. He's going to increase his abilities so that he can help him with his plan. Then we cut back to the heroes who are battling against the forces that are slowly absorbing the worlds. We have some good back and forth between heroes like Starfire, Alexander Luthor, as they're working on developing some techs. There's a good OG Flash run-in. We got, of course, Martian Manhunter here. Just heroes doing heroic stuff, having good encounters, nice little dialogue. But of course, it's all for naught. This technology is crumbling before them. And who happens to appear? But everyone's favorite, Pariah. And what does he do? Well, he does what he does best, which is whine and complain. Here he goes. I am drawn to disaster, forced to helplessly watch as untold millions perish. Yes. Well, then he disappears. And everyone's like, well, that's what he does. Let's go on. I will say, though, we are getting some great interactions, though, between Alexander Luthor and also Harbinger. Now, Harbinger realizes that he's using his own energies to draw out the final 3 Earths from this netherverse. So she knows she can't allow that. So she tries to change his mind, trying to manipulate him. He doesn't really abide by this. So she uses a part of a psychic beam coming from her head to knock him out. In which case, it's revealed. The Monitor satellite has to be maintained for the plan. It can't be fully destroyed. She has to jump into it, which she does. And it blows up. The Monitor satellite is forever destroyed as of page 6. It's a beautiful shot. I just want to say that. I think the coloration in this is fantastic. I think the line work on it is great. And then we're cutting to shots where we're going to see this very often. We have intersecting Earths and various planets, kind of just showing what's happening. As you did mention, Mike, we did have Wildcat, whose legs were crushed, and so he's being shepherded back into his home. He's wondering what good he'll be able to do now that his legs are crushed. And there is another character outside, just listening to his plea. She pays off somewhat a little bit later, but we're going to cut away from that and go to Earth 1, where Lex Luthor is in his fancy battle armor, and he is navigating through all these weird natural disasters that are occurring on Earth. And what do we happen to see? But zoop, a beam from the ship of the Brainiac, who is communicating with Luthor. So there's some collusion going on. This is going to be very interesting. I know, Brainiac and Lex Luthor together? Who would have thought? More teleporting, more heroes pontificating, more battles. But what's interesting at this point is that they're starting to see these images from the anti-matter storms in which Harbinger is within it. Almost as if she's somehow enveloped or part of the anti-monitors, the antimatter's wave. Anyway, heroes try to prevent people from getting usurped and taken up by this wave. It doesn't really go so well. People are rebelling against the heroes. We do have the I believe Uncle Sam and the rest are the quarterly heroes. Is that the correct publication?
Quality.
Pardon me. I knew there was a Q in there. Either way, they're just being like bosses, and they're just like trying to quell the crowd and protect people, including other heroes such as the new Dr. Light. But of course, chaos continues to ensue. We cut back to what is revealed to be the antimatter universe, where the anti-monitor is with Psychopirate, who is just overpowered by what he's seeing. He has this omnipresence now where he's seeing everything occur on these Earths, and he's seeing the chaos unfold. We cut to some of set actions where, again, these natural disasters and these crisis-based phenomena are being handled by various heroes, including Blue Beetle, Martian Manhunter, the original Flash. We have Captain Atom as well coming in here, and Peacemaker. So all you John Cena fans, he's in this.
Yep.
So more hero interaction, very similar to what we've seen before, where there's a lot of chaos. Now we're actually getting into a part where some of the heroes are battling with each other. So
yeah,
this is interesting. You know, even back then, we could not get a superhero crossover without some point heroes battling one another. You know, something to keep in mind now that Psychopirate has these powers of his, there is this miscommunication happening, and you could theorize that he is manipulating their emotions, forcing them to battle each other and be distracted rather than doing what they should be doing. I don't know that it's clear.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But we'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, anyway, we go on. There's more interactions, such as with Blue Beetle and the Question. We have Aquaman. Again, just showing the ramifications of what's happening with these natural forces. And we end up, through all of this great sequence going around page 17, where we have Captain Marvel, or Shazam, as he's now legally known to be called, who is battling the Titans and confronts Supergirl. Now, as you mentioned, she had some great characterization, some moments of dialogue in the previous issue, and it's really coming forward here. We're seeing the strength of her really standing her own against this character. And it accelerates to the point where what happens? Well, Supergirl's right, which means only one person, Psychopirate, must somehow be controlling them. We're getting this dialogue from another character who I actually don't know who this is. It's a
Cole?
Cole,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome design, but she was apparently created just to die in Crisis.
Really?
Well, there's the mark of a quality character. But she is good for what little time she has on the panel. So I do want to go back. Even though it's not really shown at the time, yes, it does indicate Psychopirate's powers are manipulating the emotions of the heroes, causing them to be distracted by fighting one another. However, what happens is a crystal barrier suddenly erupts, displacing the heroes from the surrounding throngs, and Harbinger's apparition appears within it. As we get these side-by-side panels of superheroes battling each other, we see that all bookmarked side-by-side with an image of Harbinger actually appearing in this white light. So what is happening with this? More heroes continue to fight. We see Harbinger's essence, her immaterial being, just continuing to be there as if she is controlling the antimatter wave, and we're seeing it expand and envelop more and more worlds, ending in this shot, this very famous shot, where she is basically absorbing all of these different worlds into her. We see a great panel sequence where these multiple planets and worlds are being absorbed into the center of her body, Earth 4, Earth X, Earth S, and more. And then Psychopirate, shaking with ecstasy, is going, "Monitor, I was controlling all their emotions. All my power was focused. No, billions of souls crying out at once. No!" And 2 Earths had been previously saved from imminent destruction. 3 more now join them. So this is interesting. We're now getting a extrapolation where these worlds are now melding. They're continuing to be within this netherverse, cutting away from this ethereal sort of Harbinger, who is now no longer Harbinger. we see her human form Lyra as she's standing next to Alexander Luthor on this.
I'll call it Lita or Lida, but it's Lila. You're right.
Yeah, Lila. Either way, her and Redhead Lex, they're talking on here, and they're just seeing that there are those final 3 universes with the 2 Monitor had already been saved. So now there's a collection of 5. There's these concentric circles blending into each other. Something slowing them down, something slowing down the absorption. And what's going to occur, as Alexander Luthor warns, is that the worlds will merge and destroy each other. So this is interesting. It's no longer just the threat of the Anti-Monitor's anti-matter waves. It's now the idea that these Earths will combine and destroy everything there. And this is a very interesting sequence, because while we have this final page where Lyra and Alex Luthor are looking down, just deciding what they're going to be able to do, we then cut to that character who is outside Wildcat's room, basically saying, "This is for you, Ted Grant. I am the new Wildcat," which is like, wow, how anticlimactic after
the old Wildcat. Oh boy.
5 Earths are going to collide, destroying everything. Here's a Catwoman. But despite that little bit of a wah ending, a solid issue where stuff happened. And this is what I meant. With this issue, you really felt like this is the halfway point. Yes, you still have white clouds absorbing everything, but you finally have a progression in the story and a change in what's happening. Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This does feel like the turning point, right? Like it's built up to this big moment, and it feels like it actually has a payoff. This is kind of what the story is supposed to be, and I like it. Yeah,
I think there's one thing I noticed when I read the Teen Titans graphic novel games. It's like I don't think Marv Wolfman has an understanding of, I don't know if it's escalating action or whatever you want to call it, but the most glaring example is the ending when he reveals that the 4 or 5 universes are going to be combined and destroy each other. But then let's cut over to the new Wildcat. Like nobody cares. Mm-hmm. You can't, you know what I mean? You can't reveal, you can't go down once you've gone up to that level. And I think that's one of the weaknesses of the series is he's trying to do small scale and large scale at the same time. Now, when you're doing like a World War II film, you can, show something getting blown up and then just cut to someone laying in a hospital bed, which is what they do in this issue. But there's still something that's not quite gelling with the way it's like, okay, now we have to care about these superheroes being mind controlled to be evil for like 3 or 4 pages. Like things like that to me do not work. And it feels like filling pages.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, some of the choices that are being made, particularly that one. I don't, again, reading this as a whole, it just kind of feels like the next step. But as an issue, it's such an awful way to end this, this like, small little chapter that they're telling. I don't know how to fix this, like how.
Well, to me, okay, page 23, when Alexander Luthor says they will destroy each other, that's the ending of the issue.
Oh, sorry, I mean more the constant building of like the world's ending and kind of like, again, a lot of these moments are really fun with the superheroes like fighting each other, but why exactly do we need Psycho Pirate to have all of these heroes turn on each other? Like, what is being stopped by this happening? Right. Like, it doesn't actually aid Anti-Monitor from his plan. Like, it doesn't change anything. If Psycho Pirate isn't there, I feel like
that's a great point.
They're all disappearing or combining anyways, right? So,
well, I will say the idea of the antimatter clouds enveloping these worlds would potentially be accelerated by these heroes fighting each other, because the idea of these other Earths coming into this netherworld, that only really comes into play through the intervention of Harbinger, who, through this explosion on the Monitor satellite, gain some sense of her personhood back again. And there's that implication that, oh, there is some moral being, some moral compass she still inhabits. She's not under the complete thrall of the Anti-Monitor. And so she has some sort of agency that allows those worlds to be there. I think that makes sense. But here's the real thing with this issue. As far as the writers were concerned, all these characters were going to die. We were going to see almost none of them again, aside from a select group. And I think this was really the idea where I normally hate intra-superhero fighting. It's one of my pet peeves for this genre. But you're never going to see Supergirl fight Captain Marvel. You're never going to see Superman and Wonder Woman fight, or whatever other combinations. And I think this was like the last big hurrah to say, let's just do it because we'll never have a chance to do it again.
Even though they did, but yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, boy, did they! But at the time, it's like, oh, they're never gonna reboot a reboot. Who does that?
Yeah, exactly. But I think I can't remember who it was. One of you hit the nail on the head. One of the problems with is Psycho Pirate accomplishes almost nothing. Red Tornado accomplishes almost nothing. The Flash accomplishes almost nothing so far. And so this plan. What is the plan, right? And how exactly is it stopped? Like this whole plot so far could have been condensed into 2 issues, maybe. We're at number 6. And don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying what's happening, but objectively, right? You look back and you go,
and Anti-Monitor seems like a character that they've written to do anything that he wants. Like he can... Whatever the story needs him to do, he has that power, right? Yep. Like he has the power to turn into like an ethereal version of himself for some reason. He has the power to amplify Psycho Pirate's powers.
Yep.
He has the ability to turn into fireballs, as we'll see later on, just not die. Like he seems indestructible. It's kind of honestly a gag in the final issue that he just can't fucking die. I just don't know what his powers are. So why does he need these little nothing characters to help him out, to further his plot, where he can kind of do everything already anyways? And like, sure, in fiction, he doesn't have, maybe he just doesn't have the, emotion powers, but why didn't they just write it so that he did? You know what I mean? Like, it's a brand new character. It just seems a little strange.
The writers could do anything they want.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I will say, though, consequentially, this gave us a great characterization of Psycho Pirate within Animal Man by Grant Morrison, because there is something tangentially related to it.
Yeah. I can't even talk about that. It's so good. Well, I mean, Grant Morrison's a better writer, and he picked up the idea and ran with it. Right. So.
Oh, yeah. It's just, I will say this. It's justified because we got a much better story out of it.
Yeah.
Not to crap on this, just, it is better. I think we're failing to give the greatest grievance, though, about Anti-Monitor. For being called Anti-Monitor, he sure does a lot of looking.
Right. Yeah. That is a little strange, huh?
Yep.
It just seems a little, I like a lot of the stuff that's happening. It just definitely, you can start to feel the not thought outness of it all. Like the unplanned story that's just kind of unraveling and running away from them at this point.
It's the loss syndrome, right? You start out a story and you don't have it planned out. So this is what happens.
And I think the dialogue with the characters talking to each other saves it at times. And then the art as well, I think, is really great. And the fact that people are actually dying. People are actually disappearing, and it's not just this like fake out comic book death where we're going to see them in 2 issues or whatever. Everything does kind of feel like it has stakes. So I'm forgiving it a little bit in this like long drawn out side of this story, but I am still enjoying it for these kind of larger flaws in these individual issues. I almost feel like I kind of want this to be like a shortened version of it. Like I feel like little parts of it put together into like one book would be a really fantastic story. If they can kind of trim out some of the unneeded little moments.
Agreed.
But
so now we're going to jump to the big one, number 7. Everyone, this is one of the most famous covers in comics history. This is, of course, the death of Supergirl. We should point out this cover not only has been imitated hundreds of times, it itself is a homage to a few different covers. George Perez brought up a specific issue. It might have been of Legion of Superheroes, but the most notable one before this was by John Byrne in the Dark Phoenix saga of Cyclops holding Phoenix. But there's a bunch of them. Batman holding Robin, a bunch of them. But anyway, it's a beautiful cover. Superman holding Supergirl's lifeless body. All the superheroes all assembled behind him. It's a great cover. I love it. But anyway, so now we're going to jump into the most famous issue. So we've got this great continuation of last issue of Pariah, Harbinger, and Alexander Luthor talking on this floating asteroid in space. Somehow there's sound. Who cares, right? Doesn't matter. So we cut over. Oh, again, this is Dr. Savannah, who we haven't seen in the series yet, right? I don't think so. Anyway,
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway,
no, I was trying to think of who this. I don't even think I know who this person is.
That's Dr. Savannah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a Captain Marvel villain, correct?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you saw the Shazam movie, right?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
But in the movie they make him as muscular as Captain Marvel, which is stupid. This is what he's supposed to be like. Now, this scene, I've never liked the scene. Dr. Savannah teleports, but he actually has the wherewithal to narrate. Don't know what's happening, but I'm not going to tell him that. And then one of the characters actually says, Savannah was as surprised as we were. I mean, I don't know how teleportation would actually work, but do we really need those extra details? Like, to me, if he would have just disappeared, we don't need that extra explanation, because we're going to find out on the next page that he was teleported away by someone else. But whatever. Those little details sometimes irritate me. But
I do have one question before you go on.
Sure.
Please tell me that is Tony the Tiger standing there.
No, it's Tawny the Talking Tiger. Come on.
Whatever.
This is. Anyway, so then we cut over to Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman, Supergirl, all just dealing with what's going on. We touch base on Earth 2 with the Atom, and the new Wildcat is ready to reveal herself, but not yet. Right? And then we touch base with the Charlton characters, and I love seeing them because I'm always reminded that Alan Moore wanted to use them for a story that became so nihilistic that they had to recreate all the characters into the Watchmen. But right now we're seeing Peacemaker, we're seeing Peter Cannon, Thunderbolt. So basically, if you think comedian and Ozymandias, right? Then we see Blue Beetle, who's Night Owl. We see Nightshade, who's is it Nightshade?
Interesting.
Yeah, Nightshade, who is Silk Spectre. So it's just cool to think of it that way. Then we jump over to Earth X, touch base there. We see, with them it's ancient, not ancient, but Native Americans. Then we see World War II jumping around. Then we see the splash page, Beyond the Silent Night. And we see an assemblage of superheroes, including Lady Quark, Superman, Uncle Sam, Captain Marvel, Superman, Blue Beetle. And they're giving the rundown of what's going on. And this is where things start to get really interesting, in my opinion, because now we see the origin of the multiverse. So we flash back to Oa, which is at the center of the universe, even though, as we know now, the universe has no center. But anyway, in real life anyway, we see these scientists, they want to learn the origin of the universe. So they're able to view it on this monitor screen. And they
monitor?
Yeah. And they see this hand, the hand of creation, creating the universe. And I believe this is all, this is all shown in an actual issue, Green Lantern number 40. So this is all DC canon, which I love. And then we see that at that moment, what was supposed to be the universe became the multiverse. So, sorry. No, this is the creation of the antimatter universe. It gets confusing.
I think that the antimatter universe, though, created I think it's all the same, one and the same.
Well, you might say that, Rabbit. You might, but I think it's weird because later, after the multiverse gets destroyed, the antimatter universe is still there. It makes no sense.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and that's, I've read this 1,000 times and I still don't quite get it. Okay, but anyway, so now we have this guy. What's his name again?
I don't know.
The guy who's on trial. I can't remember, but he's on trial. Because of this, the Owens create the first police force of robots called the Manhunters, but they fail. So then they're replaced by the Green Lanterns. Then we see a reference to the Controllers and all this beautiful DC history. What?
I just love that there are these giant race of robots, and they failed, so we got this little fuck to save. I love that.
Would you like a job?
This nasty little guy.
That's a good point.
But I mean, you to kick somebody's ass.
Yeah.
and you know, these ideas, they've all been adapted into the cartoons here and there, but they were never done as well as this, I don't think. But whatever. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, we see the origin of the Anti-Monitor on Quard. That's the planet, the pool of, whatever that he's born in.
Yeah. Antimatter.
Antimatter, yeah. Like I guess, well, it's liquid, but I mean, it is matter. But it's like saying, I mean, you don't go swimming in a pool of matter. You go in water, right? Like it's got to be made of something. I just don't know what. But anyway, so then we see like all these other characters, like who those guys called with the Thunderbolts? I don't remember.
They're just some guys that I think Anti-Monitor makes, right? Like
I think they're characters from previous comics, though. I think they do have a name, but I just can't remember
okay.
who they are. Yeah.
He turns them into the Shadow guys, though.
Okay.
Right. So he must have grabbed these army of warriors. He does say he created an army of warriors.
Yeah, he converts the Thunderer elite into the Shadow Demons.
Right.
Who, by the way, this is also what's confusing. The Shadow Demons have the silhouette of the Monitor. Like, if you look at the Shadow Demons, they look like the Monitor. It's very confusing. Anyway, so then we see that the Monitor senses the Anti-Monitor. They shoot laser beams at each other, but they're held apart by a comic book panel. They knock each other unconscious for how long?
Millennia.
Yeah, 9 billion years. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I don't know how she knows all this. And then Superman says, "I've heard of Quard, but never knew its origins. What freed the Anti-Monitor?" And then now we get the origin of Pariah. So now this is on a different planet. And he wants to look at the origin of the universe, and he creates this like cube that he can look into. And he is what unleashes the antimatter cloud that's going to destroy everything, right? Again, I love this whole sequence. It's great. So he unleashes the Anti-Monitor. He unleashes the antimatter cloud. Then we see how the Monitor discovers Leela. Is it Lila or Leela? I don't know. Lila. And then recruits her to become Harbinger. And then that's pretty much the end of the origin. And then Uncle Sam is like, "This here fella suffered plain for what he did. Reckon now's the time for us to band together, not fight amongst ourselves." So it's a cool little scene. I like it. Then we cut over to all the other heroes like Phantom Stranger, Spectre, Deadman, what's her name? Huntress, Power Girl, who in the tarnation's that
Nightshade.
guy? Firebrand, Human Bomb, yeah, Peacemaker, Captain Marvel Jr., all beautifully drawn by Perez and Ordway. And then Alexander Luthor reveals that he has a convenient ability to open a portal into the antimatter universe, right? Which they can all fly into. Again, it's a great scene. Whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
So they fly in, and they come upon this giant floating castle. Or not castle, but it's kind of like a big headquarters for the Anti-Monitor. It's a really cool sequence. Mm-hmm. And then they're flying through, and they're like, oh, they're not quite sure what's going on, so they're kind of investigating, right, as they go. And we cut back over to the Anti-Monitor, who is talking to Psycho Pirate. They're still trying to figure out what his role is in the story. Mm-hmm. We cut back over to the heroes. Then they start getting attacked by the castle itself, and then Superman realizes that he can bleed, which is like he shouldn't be able to. So it's kind of like a cool little, thing. And so anyway, hold on a sec here. So then it's a typical thing. The heroes now, they have like a little. It's like they're fighting their way through to the big boss, but before they can get to the big boss, they have to battle now this living castle thing. So they fight that for a little while. Green Lantern's using his power. Superman, both Supermans are there. Dr. Light. It's kind of cool. Then we cut back over to so then they come upon in the middle of the castle. This is it's a solar collector, obviously converting starlight into energy, right? So they figure out that he's using this machine to reduce the vibrational differences between Earth. So this is like another plan. Like there's been like 5 plans so far, but then in the background we see that the monitor, or the anti-monitor, is actually watching them. And then the anti-monitor attacks Superman from behind, right? And we know what's coming because we've read the story before, folks. Break out the Kleenex boxes. And then, so then they're fighting. Then now it's Supergirl. Oh, wait, sorry. No, I don't want to jump ahead. So then Anti-Monitor is now in direct contact with him. So he comes up. He's like, I shall not be stopped. And then Supergirl comes out of nowhere and punches him right in the face, punches him again. Then he lashes back at her. And then, now he's like, no, now I'm going to destroy Superman. She's like, no, I won't allow you. You hear me? So now she's directly fighting the Monitor one-on-one. He's like, you have destroyed most of my body. I feel my energy's waning. Thus, I can wait no longer. You are dead. So then he draws all of his energy and then fires one last bolt at her, and she's flying towards him. And then, on the next page, she gets blasted with a big laser blast. And then Superman's like, Kara! And then he runs away. His body's destroyed. He flies, and everyone looks up, watches him. Great Hera, what happened in there? And then we cut back over to all the heroes as they gather around Superman as he holds his cousin and she dies. And it's a beautifully drawn sequence by George Perez. If you just Josh just ruined it, but anyway, if you follow Supergirl like holding Superman and then her eye closing, the tear coming, the hand dropping, and then the last panel of him just crying out in anguish. It's incredibly done. It's really well done. And then, of course, George Perez ruins it on the next page. It's not fair. She shouldn't have died for me. It's a little melodramatic. I don't really like the close-ups of the faces on the next page, but I can forgive it. It's still a great scene. The heroes all fly away. We cut back over to the Daily Planet. The announcement, Supergirl dead. People watching on the TV. We see news casts from all around the world. We see Batgirl doing like a little eulogy or whatever it's called. And then we cut back over to Superman, and he's got Supergirl's body wrapped up in a blanket, and he's flying her off into space. And we end with a little thing here, like a little poem. Is there beyond the silent night an endless day? Is death a door that leads to light? We cannot say. Declaration of the Free. So yeah, nice little ending. Not perfect, but a very well done issue. Adam, what did you think of this one?
It is probably the most important issue of the series for a good reason. I think when people think about Infinite Crisis, usually their minds go to a couple sequences, and one of them is the death of Supergirl. And I think what happened before, yes, there was a lot of character deaths, but as I mentioned, one of the strengths of this was having a lot of, as I said, B-list superheroes come in and still giving them a sense of importance. And yet when they died, it was like, oh, well, I don't really know these characters that well. They're not that iconic. I guess I just, I'm not that shaken by it. This is major. Having a character as major as Kara pass away was huge. And I think the impact is shown. I just want to say one more thing. I hate superhero deaths tremendously. Not only because they're retconned to be meaningless in the end, also because it's always tending to be out of some act of stupidity or hubris from the hero. This is Supergirl going down in an act of glory to protect her cousin, to protect the world, fighting to the bitter end. And to me, it's like, you know what? It's never good to have a character die, but there's no better superhero death than this one, because it's the most pure and the most representative of what her character is supposed to be and what superheroes are supposed to be. I know you mentioned a few flaws here and there. I actually think the next sequence, even though it seems melodramatic and over the top, arguably, Like the fact that Superman is saying, I'm going to kill him, just shows the gravity of this. Wow, even Superman, this bastion of virtue, is like, I want to kill him for killing my cousin. I think it works. And to me, this is the standout issue of the entire series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, this was definitely one of the better issues, both with the gravity of the story that's being told. I also feel like there is a little bit more meat to what's happening here. Like it feels like it's very clear what the characters are supposed to be doing in this one. I think more than any of the other ones. Like there's a clear direction as to what's going on. We're gonna team up, open up this portal, go and take antimatter head on, and stop this once and for all. And they fail in a sense doing so. Like they don't defeat him, and while also not defeating them, they suffer this incredible loss. We're kind of left at the end thinking like, if Supergirl can die, if Superman can die, then how can we possibly stop this threat? It seems impossible.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it does have a lot of, I think, weight to it. This story, and I did really enjoy it. I think it was really good.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, okay. Here's the thing: this story is famous, and for that reason, it's also well done. Mm-hmm. However, the fact that I know why Supergirl was killed, which is basically because the people at DC didn't give a shit about her, kind of ruins it for me. Like Dick Giordano's actual quote. Yeah, Dick Giordano's quote was, "Whoa, what is she, Superman with tits?" Actual quote from a grown adult. Thanks, Dick. You know, maybe to him, because maybe he was already a teenager when she came out, and so he was irreverent to her, didn't care. But if you're a kid and you grow up with her, then she is a big deal, and she'd been around for 30 years, right? So, I mean, it is a good story, but I wish they would have had more respect for the character.
My theory is that her movie came out the year before, and it bombed horribly. 1984's Supergirl is rightfully panned because it's a god-awful movie.
Yeah.
But with that said, you know, they gave no care. They gave no budget or real attention to what was happening in that film. They basically just said, here's the Supergirl character. Do whatever you want to with her. And as a consequence, they made an awful movie. And I think simply the higher-ups decided, well, she's not a bankable name. She's easy to be disposed of.
That's probably part of it. I mean, the other thing, too, is I remember apparently some of the DC executives or editors were like, because a lot of people, there was a lot of outcry about this, right? And they're like, well, if you liked her so much, maybe you should have bought her comic. Well, maybe you should have made her comic better, because the series that she had leading up to this was terrible. It was terrible. I've tried to read it. So whatever. I mean, again, if you're a kid and you grow up with Supergirl, you're attached to her. But like, I'm an adult now, so if I'm working at DC and I'm 40 or 50 years old, I'm probably as attached to Supergirl, or I'm as like Mike Poirier would be attached to, like, oh, who's Cassandra Cain? You know, who's Stephanie Brown? Like all these characters that came after I was a kid, I don't care about them, and they probably didn't care about Supergirl, right? So that's probably why they're like, yeah, kill her, do what you want, I don't care. But yeah, good issue. I guess the only weakness is that Supergirl didn't do much in the series before this issue. So it would have been nice if she had a more important role the whole way through, so that her death would have had more impact just as a story on its own, right?
To a degree. I would say, though, you had a narrative that's going between all these different points of view and all these different characters. She did have a little bit of meat where there was more story told from her point of view or her perspective. A few pages here and there, which I'll agree doesn't seem like a lot, but when you consider every other character seems just to have a page, an issue, or maybe a few panels on a page, like, it does seem at least they were trying to give her a little bit more leading up to this compared to some others. I mean, I'll say this. I've counted. She has more lines of dialogue in this than Batman. So that says a lot.
Interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, so here's the thing, folks. This is the most famous issue, but if that was not...
Oh, no, you're right. That was the most famous issue.
Well, yeah, Well, here's the thing: is Supergirl does come back, we know that. But if this wasn't enough, in the next issue, someone else dies. So who's taking on number 8? Is it Josh?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, this issue, we start off with the Flash in the Anti-Monitor ship, suspended in some goop, and Anti-Monitor has a new body now that he's escaped the first fight, and he's got this kind of smooth, robotic, action figure-esque body. And he says something about something to Psycho Pirate, something about it's time to just destroy the remaining Earths or something. And then finally, we actually catch up with Darkseid and see what he's doing. This issue is very strange with the kind of B subplot. So we do get a little bit more of the Lanterns trying to figure out what's going on with Oa and trying to figure out why they don't have powers. We catch up with some other characters as they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're studying Red Tornado. Right. Cyborg steps in and he thinks that he can maybe do something, but Red Tornado is so advanced they need the Atom to shrink down and go inside of his vitals to kind of like see what's going on, and for some reason he self-destructs.
Well, guess what? You have to read an issue of Justice League to find out why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, probably never going to do that.
Yeah. It's the problem of like, at this point in the story, why is this important? Right? Yeah,
I don't understand why this is happening in this book. Like, if it's happening in the Justice League, I think it makes sense because it's that through line, but maybe just reference it if you want it to feel connected. Having this whole scene, I feel like, is so out of place. This issue, I was the most lost reading, and I feel like I've kind of just everything has gone out the window for this particular issue. Because then this weird tentacly alien shows up, only for something to explode, and he's now like sucked into space. The ship is just disintegrating for some reason. That
is explained in an issue of Omega Man, number 31 to be exact. Yeah. Okay. See, this is where. Okay, if I could just cut in for 1 second, this is the first time that a company basically went to all their writers and said, we're going to cross over into all your books, whether you like it or not. And this pissed everybody off. But as we know now, this happens every month at Marvel and DC. Gotcha. Like even now in 2024, there's crossovers every month, and I don't buy any of them because I can't stand them. But at this time, it was a novelty, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway.
So yeah, that's what's going on there, I guess. We're seeing Antimatter is creating a new building, antimatter cannon machine.
Yeah, it's his new plan, his 7th plan.
Yeah, this is what's finally going to destroy all of the universes. Right. And then in this moment, Flash, it's revealed that Flash has been like preserving his energy, and he's finally able to move and vibrate so fast that he slips out of the jello that he's being held in. And he punches Psycho Pirate. He like beats the ever-loving shit out of him pretty much until he begs for his life. And he's like, yeah, I don't really need you anymore. It's not really a big deal. So then the Flash starts zipping around this base as the cannon is being built, and Antimatter is blasting at him, and he's like missing some of them. Oh, the Flash is like manipulating him to, what's happening is the Flash is manipulating all of the goons to turn on antimatter. So antimatter is just blasting them. So again, just kind of some more action going on. He then ditches him and then jumps through to the center of this thing, and he tries to run around it real fast to destroy it and go back in time, I guess. And in doing so, disintegrates. And this is kind of the reveal of like, this is why he has been showing up to the different timelines, because he was moving so fast around this antimatter ball of energy that he was able to send these messages out to these different time periods. And we do see him actually disintegrate into ash as his costume. His body turns into like mush, and then his bones start to crumble, and his suit just limply falls onto the ground here, and his ring kind of rolls down the steps. And antimatter is angry and just explodes, and he's like, "This is it. I'm finally going to destroy the Earths again."
And then we see the reaction of the challengers of the unknown, which we haven't seen yet, which is kind of cool.
Sure.
And
then the Spectre's here now.
Yeah. And then we see another quote. "Oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? Like a fast flittering meteor, a fast flying cloud, a flash of the lightning, a break of the wave, he passes from life to his rest in the grave." William Knox. Okay, here's my thing. The Supergirl issue is far more famous, but I'm not sure why. The Flash, was just as important a character, and for some reason nobody cared that he died, and he stayed dead for 20 years. That's the even bigger thing.
I think that maybe Flash fans would really care, but nobody's here in this issue to care that the Flash dies.
That's
so
a good
it's
point.
kind of hard. It's almost forgotten, I feel like, that he even dies after such a strong death and these like strong character moments of Kara's death. And it doesn't feel earned. Like I'm not really sure what the Flash is doing, and his death also doesn't feel like it was a good sacrifice either. Like he, I guess, blows up this cannon, but then antimatter's like, okay, I guess I'll just make a different, bigger, better cannon and still destroy Earth. Like it just doesn't work. I'm not sure how they fix this, but
to me, if Andy Monitor had one plan and the Flash foiled that one plan in like the last issue, right? That would right. But
or nobody knows what's happening yet, so he has to. I don't know. It just doesn't make quite much. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It's not strong.
We've also seen his death earlier in issue number 2.
We see the apparition of him.
And it's this, right? Like it's him turning into bone and dust in Batman's hands. So when we see it here, we're like, oh, okay, I get it. He was just revealing the message. Like this is in the future. He was sending a message to the past. And it doesn't hit as strong. I think not having anybody there with him really hurts that. We don't get this funeral for Flash. We don't get news reports. We don't really see these moments of mourning. In the next issue, we do kind of see this small moment with one of the other versions of Flash picking up the ring or whatever, but that's about it. That's all we really get for him. And then I think in the final issue, there's like a little epilogue with that different version of Flash, but it doesn't feel like a send-off for the character.
I would argue it's because they weren't going to get rid of the character. I mean, the important thing to keep in mind is that I think most people, casual readers, would not necessarily go, oh, the Flash, Barry Allen. They would just go, the Flash. I do think when Wally West took over as Flash, not a lot of people even knew that there was a difference. I don't think a lot of people even understood, if they were casual readers, that was the change, because you still had the iconic red and yellow outfit. You still had the Scarlet Speedster doing very similar adventures, taking on this maybe a little bit more jovial, jokey of a persona, but the Flash character or persona was going to be continued on, whereas with Supergirl, it was full stop. So I think that is part of it.
Well, but to be fair, there's no way the readers knew that when they read this issue, right?
But, if you're asking why isn't the legacy as strong, well, I think the legacy isn't as strong is because, Supergirl was not seen in comics for at least a decade, maybe 2 decades after that.
2 years.
Was that it?
Yeah, because 2 years.
It seemed so long in comic continuity.
In 1988, John Byrne introduced Matrix, which was the Supergirl from a pocket dimension that we find out is actually a protoplasmic being that became Lana Lang, then became Supergirl, and then she got turned into the Angel Supergirl that Peter David wrote. So really, she was only gone for 2 years.
I forgot how much I hated that continuity. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, for whatever reason, the Flash's death itself was not as big a deal. But I do admire DC for keeping him dead for 20 years, and then they brought him back in like 2008, I think.
It was more than 20 years. It was almost 30 years, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'm not good at math. Is that 28?
92, yeah.
95, 2005, that's 20. So 23 years. 23 years, yeah. And then they kind of got rid of him again because they decided to keep Wally West. It's a disaster. It doesn't even matter. The point is that let's just talk about this issue. Not as good. A lot of subplots at the beginning, filling time. And also, if you're gonna kill off your 2 major characters, why do it one issue after the other? Weird choice, eh?
Yeah. And then
I don't know, Josh. Just to argue against that, I think there is a purpose. Supergirl died, surrounded by her peers. It took an entire army to subdue the Anti-Monitor, and he still managed to escape. I feel in his own way, maybe Barry Allen did go out in a blaze of glory because he did it all by himself. He took over Psycho Pirate. He manipulated the minions of Anti-Monitor by using his emotional manipulation powers to sway them to do the attack. He destroyed the tower that no other superheroes were around. So quite possibly his plan would have been achieved because no one else was there for intervention. I would actually argue in its own way, while it may not have the gravitas because you don't have like the big denouement afterwards of all the heroes grieving, there is a strong showing for Flash doing something much different. He's not going in and punching Anti-Monitor. He's using his head. He's using the resources of the powers Psycho Pirate has and single-handedly saved the multiverse in this instance by destroying that one tower. Did it make a big difference in the end? No, because Anti-Monitor obviously he's in a few more issues, but I still think he went out saving the world in a way that was not fully recognized, which I think is maybe to the strength of what he did, a selfless act as a hero.
Sure.
That's the way I've always looked at it myself. And I think having that compared, you can see the big sweeping, almost like cinematic death of Supergirl versus this quiet, diminutive death where he's quite literally desiccating and just fading away.
I think the reason why it still doesn't work for me is just the setup of what he is destroying, because it feels like no time has passed between his first plan and his second plan, right? Like we see him and he gets away and he's like almost half destroyed. Then we see him again and he's completely fine and has a new suit and he already has a new weapon. He's like, yeah, once I turn this on, the universe is gonna die. So it's like, oh, okay. And then the Flash again quickly destroys it. I feel like there's no like build up to these stakes. Like I'm being told that there's this device is gonna destroy the universe finally, but like it feels like.
Well, it's like they invented something new just for Flash to destroy it, just so he could die in one issue.
If they explained if they explained that this thing had been the thing making the worlds disintegrate this whole time, and that's what's being destroyed, and all of these other heroes failed in destroying this or something, then I feel like it totally works. But I just, it feels strange to have it in this moment, in this way.
And, you know, I'm going to concede that you had 5 issues preceding the Supergirl one where it was all build up. And this one, it was right after a huge climax in that previous issue. So I am going to say, in terms of pacing, yeah, I get your point, and I'll concede to it. It does seem like it's jumping the gun a little bit in that rate.
Yeah, but I think you're right. They could have, I think it totally could have worked with this, like a lone sacrifice. Like, all of these heroes teamed up, they couldn't do it, but then he's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the greater good to destroy this thing and stop it. I think that could have 100% worked. I just think that they fumbled it a little bit with the setup of getting to that point.
Agree.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's already been 2.5 hours and we still have a lot of comics to talk about. So what's the next one here, folks? Number 9.
Right.
Who's talking about this one? Is it Adam?
Again,
This
ending too is also strange afterwards. Like, oh, but the Spectre's here. It's like, hasn't the Spectre been here the whole time? Like, he's been popping up. Why is this a big deal? But yeah.
The villain issue. This is a big one, and it's kind of cool because we've seen all these heroes team up. Now it's time for the baddies to do it. On the planet of Oa, more Green Lantern shenanigans are happening with everyone's favorite misanthrope, Guy Gardner. And what happens? But there happens to be a big boom from the outside. The base of Oa is blown up. We see the survivors talking to each other. And of course, Guy Gardner, in his usual way, goes, by the power that belongs to the Green Lantern, all evil will be destroyed, flying off. And then a little panel saying, will be continued in Green Lantern 195. To hell with tie-in issues. Don't do this to me, guys.
I agree. I hate it. I really hate it.
But then we get into some good stuff, because then we go into Brainiac's self-imposed prison in his little ship, his little de facto giant head, and we see this mass of supervillains trying to figure out why they're brought here, what's going on, and it's because they have been beckoned by the combined forces of Brainiac and Lex Luthor. So, according to Brainiac, if his calculations are true, the crisis that the Anti-Monitor created is over, and now the Earths are in chaos rife for the taking. So this assemblage of big supervillains could maybe, under the controlled power of Lex and Brainiac, take over. There's some resistance, and said resistance meets a Starscream fate where he's blown up right on the spot. And there we go. And I also love this jovial Lex Luthor at the final panel of page 4 going, okay, good. Boys and girls, here's the plan.
I love that. Yeah.
So good. Oh, Lex, you little cad. We get some superhero interactions with Starfire, with the Titans. Again, the Marv Wolfman and George Perez connection to Titans, like kind of just like a little wink and a nod there, which I appreciate. And there's more interactions as the Titans and other heroes go about trying to quell the chaos that's happening amongst these Earths that are still partially aligning with each other, but have just been decimated by these attacks. And that includes weird interdimensional and time anomalies where we see on one page, which I find to be fantastic, it's page 7, a panel where we have biplanes, we have futuristic vessels, we have old-time steam engines and dinosaurs and volcanoes just interacting within the same area, just showing this displacement and the chaos it's causing to the world. The superheroes are deciding what they're going to end up doing. And then we cut to a sequence where Clark Kent is actually on the news. It's pretty interesting because he's mentioning how Alexander Luthor will be addressing the leaders of all 5 Earths today at the United Nations, which I find interesting because is there just one United Nations now? Has like that been combined on all Earths? I don't think it's really explained now, is it?
Yeah, I don't really quite know how they're interacting. You're right. Good point. I don't know.
But you know what? Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, whatever. We're seeing more and more stuff shift between time and space. We're seeing World War II soldiers. We're seeing futuristic battles. We're seeing heroes dying. We're seeing civilians ensued just with the flaming chaos of the world. And that all precedes the great announcement that we're going to get from Alexander Luthor, as well as Lila, pardon me, and what's his name? Whiny guy.
Pariah.
Yeah.
So this is actually really interesting, and I'm being a bit glib, but I love the fact that we're actually just having a little bit of a slowdown. We're having a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Yes, I agree.
A chance to breathe after the kinetic last couple issues where we're seeing something we almost never see, which I love. The fallout of all these big superhero battles. You're actually seeing real world consequences, including the panic of everyone within the world not knowing what's going on. Well, during this announcement, Pariah ends up disappearing yet again. He's being drawn elsewhere, to which he knows the danger has not ended, which of course freaks out the assembled reporters, Clark Kent. But that's not all. Suddenly an apparition appears in the middle of the United Nations, and it is the Brainiac brand face ship. And he is demanding Earths 1 and 2 will be... Well, it's interesting, actually. I should go back, because what he basically wants is Alexander Luthor, to work with them. He wants to take over some of these Earths because, end of quote, while most of the 5 Earth's heroes assembled here, we have used our power to take over Earths designated 4X and S. So he wants the other 2 worlds, otherwise they'll cause mass chaos and destroy them. And it's interesting, too, because here we get a great meeting between Lex Luthor and Alexander Luthor, where he even goes, it's like my dad, but this one reeks of evil, which is very telling considering what's going to happen in a future series. But, regardless, it's a nice little show. It's great that we have Lex Luthor in the chambers of the United Nations. Superman is, obviously aware of what's going on. He's changing. We also have the Creeper cutting to some other time-displaced heroes. Essentially, what's happening is they're collecting together, trying to break down this barrier that will allow them to get into these other Earths. However, they are not managing to. And when I say they, I mean almost every hero. You have Dr. Fate, you have Superman, you have Power Girl, and Captain Atom, and none of them are managing to get through this barrier. As mentioned by Josh earlier, we do get a sequence where Wally West ends up being met by the original Flash. And I like this. This is really good. Jay Garrick basically lets him know what happened to his great mentor, the Flash, providing him with the ring. And you do get this sense of loss. It's a much needed sense of pathos. I will agree, after the last issue and the sort of lack of denouement after the death, it's kind of nice to see that reaction happen with this character, Wally West, who is known as a jokester, who's known as a little bit of a hothead, and he's just basically speechless at Jay Garrick informing him what's happening. He doesn't want to become Flash again, but as we see, he realizes the gravity of the situation, and he works. He works with Jay Garrick to be on one of those fancy treadmills that will take them through space and time. I love that so much.
The cosmic treadmill.
The cosmic treadmill makes a return, and I just love as they're running on it. All the other heroes are just looking on in awe. Jay Garrick goes, "Faster, lad, faster!" And they zip out, creating this huge blast of energy. They're gone from this world, to be determined later where they're at. Anyway, back at the HQ of the supervillains, there's some usual bickering, but then also some great platitudes being given to each other for how they're managing to take over the world, although we are seeing their plans starting to be foiled from the arrival of some heroes interfering. For example, the greatest pairing of all, the Riddler and Mark Hamill, are attacked by Beast Boy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The trickster, yep.
Yep, the trickster. And more battles ensue as the heroes try to free the worlds from various villains. So it's a very fight-heavy section of this, but it's really cool because we are seeing heroes from different continuities fighting villains from other continuities they may not normally encounter, including this great sequence where we have this giant pulsating energy thing. I think it's called Chemo. I'm not quite clear.
Chemo, yes. Yeah,
Yes,
he's a Metal Men villain, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that explains why I know nothing about him. But he breathes fire, and he has basically decapitated the Statue of Liberty. What a powerful image! While there's underwater battles as well going on between Black Manta. I think we also have I always forget his name. Aqualad.
Aqualad and Aqua Girl.
Is it Aqualad? Okay, Dolphin I think was one of them as well. Basically, we're getting a lot of fight scenes, but really well choreographed ones. I'm speeding through it, but I think these are some of the best illustrated fights I've seen in quite some time, with a range of heroes and villains engaging. Also, it's nice to have villains and heroes fighting rather than just heroes fighting each other. And there's this great sequence of cold-based villains, including, as I said, the much misnamed. I want to call her Icicle now too.
Killer Frost.
Killer
Frost.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Captain Cold there, Weather Wizard. They're just kind of gloating over what they're doing. There's another scene with Poison Ivy, Jason Woodrue, the Joker. They've captured some heroes. So we're getting a kind of like,
I love this scene.
It's so good with the Joker talking to people. I'm not even going to spoil what they're saying. It's fantastic. I also want to bring out that there's a talking caterpillar in Goggles, and I don't know what that thing is, but it's
from
amazing.
Shazam.
Mr. Mind from Shazam. Yep.
Oh, I need to read more Shazam. Superman's fighting a Nazi Superman, I guess. Wildcat's actually doing something.
You mean Captain Nazi? Yeah, it's Captain Nazi.
Oh.
That's a pretty on-the-nose name, but okay. Anyway, really cool battles. Again, not to be too glib, but what's happening then next is that Lex Luthor and Brainiac are assessing the battle. They're realizing something is up. They may not be able to win. Lex Luthor asks Brainiac, do you have any ideas? And he's not responding. Brainiac, are you listening? Pal, you haven't said what in the blazes? And Brainiac starts sputtering, and he explodes in Luthor's face, trying to figure out what happens. What's left of him? Well, then he sees another form standing over him, and it is this other villain. He is someone who wants to kill Luthor. And I believe the character's name is Simon, but it's Psimon, which I gotta give it, that's a great name. You know what? This issue was frantic, a lot of fights. I liked how it built up, though, with some quiet moments, actually showing the outcome of this battle for the multiverse, and then actually having a hero and villain fight sequence. It's a big kind of blockbuster, eat popcorn, leave your brain at the door sort of sequence, and it worked. Great interactions. I'll say it's probably one of my favorite issues of the whole series. But what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was gonna say it was really fun, these little moments, and I think it was nice to have a little bit of a breather and kind of set up the fact that these supervillains are kind of taking this opportunity to do evil and take over an Earth, and I think that is a really nice setup for later on when we see a bit of a change. Like I think this is a really nice way to build on these villains and kind of reintroduce them into the story. I will say, I think at this point, I was starting to get a little bit confused as to what exactly is happening with the Earths. Because at the beginning, they're disappearing, right? And then weird things are happening where they're converging at points. But then I thought Earth 1 and 2 were then separated and isolated, and they were combined into one Earth.
They were never combined. The thing is, we also have to understand, when George Perez draws the Earths like this, they are not physically like touching. They're on different vibrational frequencies. So they're like a ghost image overlapping. But
Yeah.
they're not. Yeah.
But I for some reason thought that when Monitor saves them in the other dimension, that for some reason it was combined, and Earth 1 and 2 were separated from all the rest.
No, Earth 1 and 2 were isolated, but they were never combined. But they were saved in that Netherverse, but they were never combined. No.
Gotcha. Okay.
They might have overlapped, but they didn't combine. No.
I think it's because of those weird harmony vibrations Mike was talking about. The implication is there's parts where the harmonies enact with each other, and that's when you'll have bleed over. So you'll have dinosaurs come over, or you'll have like heroes or characters from one realm go into another. That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take away from your point, because I do think, as fun as this was, you think about it too hard, it's kind of like, Looper and time travel. Don't think about it too hard, because you can get lost pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty strange at times. And then even this really fun bit of like the reporter and the ships flying around. It's like, when I first read this, I was like, did my version mess up? Because this already happened, almost exactly this.
Okay.
Right? I was like, wait, and I had to go back and be like, okay, no, it is different panels. Because in the second issue, I think it was, we see a very similar scene where there is this like landscape panel that takes up like the top half of the page, where it's the city and all these different planes from different timelines kind of flying in the sky at the same time, and these dinosaurs are crashing into buildings. I was like, it's at this point, I was kind of like, why does this feel like it's news? Like it's a new thing that's happening, because it's been happening now for, in the timeline of the comics, months, right? This is the 9th issue. So it's been going on for 9 months now.
No, well, in comic book time, it might be 9 days, right?
Oh, okay. I assume that they were talking about this, because they even say it's like July 1985.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I had assumed that it was kind of like they were dragging this out, so it was like in real time, but because they specifically talk about like a real dates and stuff. But even if that's not the case, it just feels strange, because to us it feels like a long time at this point, and it's like, why is this new news?
That's a good point. So that's a good point.
So it's just like, I think maybe that's also why when they're showing like moments like this, where it's like, oh, the Earths are overlapping and we're seeing this thing. It's like, how is this changing, and why is it different from what's been happening before?
That's a good point.
I would have almost would have liked to have seen like the progression of that. Sure. Maybe we're seeing the same image, but like the buildings are destroyed, and you know, like the aftermath of like how after all this time, these beings from different timelines and different times in those timelines like combining. But
I know what you mean. I
do love the supervillain stuff. I think that's really fun, seeing them kind of wreak havoc and fight each other and fight these superheroes. There's some really great stuff going on here. It's
funny because this is Marv Wolfman's least favorite issue, but I noticed, I think the villain plot itself is weak, but if you keep it on that page, Josh, it has, I love this moment where we get this little quiet scene of, what character is this? I don't even know who that is. Oh, I think it's Johnny Cloud or one of these guys.
The Creeper?
No, the guy with the airplane at the bottom.
Oh.
I love the fact that for this brief time, there's no red sky, there's no disaster. It's just a guy going to his airplane. And I just love that we can have that scene in the middle of this total chaos. I love that. And then we can have the little subplot on the next page of Wally West talking to Jay Garrick. I love that. And then again, it's like we talked about taking a breather. Then we can build up to, okay, guys, now we got to get ready for the next thing. The cosmic treadmill, break it out. And again, this was my first time seeing it. but it tantalized me as a kid and made me want to read more about it. And if you were a longtime reader of DC, you were like, oh, they're busting out the cosmic treadmill. It must be important, right? And then we're seeing Red Star, we're seeing Hawk and Dove, we're seeing, again, all these characters, and Tempest, Cole. Like, it's actually a great issue, even though it's very, I guess, up and down. Now, I also want to point out that in number 7, the inking duties were split by Jerry Ordway and Dick Giordano. Now we're back to Jerry Ordway, but he's not just inking, he's actually embellishing, which basically means George Perez is doing rougher outlines, rougher layouts, and Ordway is going in and doing the actual pencils himself. And so it has a different feeling in this issue, and I think it really comes through if you flip a couple pages ahead. Actually, wait, there was one page I really wanted to talk about. Sorry, let me just jump back to it. Of course, now I can't find it. It doesn't really matter. But the expression, like, Josh, if you go to the next page, I can't even find it now. Maybe it's the one after that. This is so dramatic. I'm glad all of our millions of listeners are being patient with us.
Is it this face here?
No, it's not that one. But
that's a great face.
Yeah. But Luthor's face on page 24. It's actually a couple pages ahead.
Sure.
That at the bottom, that's a Jerry Ordway face, if you ask me. That's a great face. Very three-dimensional, a real accurate understanding of how anatomy and faces fit together. He's an incredible artist. And then if you go to the next page, just the expression on his face at the bottom, that's really like a Jerry Ordway sequence, I think. And so we got to give him a little bit more credit than he's gotten for the rest of it. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Not my favorite issue, but still a lot of good stuff going on.
So we have 3 issues left, and Mike, you're going to be taking over issue number 10.
Yes. Yeah. And this is one of my favorites. Absolutely. So, we have this great cover of the Spectre about to fight the Anti-Monitor, and they're standing over the creation of the goddamn universe. It's awesome. Only in a superhero comic. And of course, when they adapted the story to the Flash TV show, they were standing around in a room. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so let's dive in. We see the pickup of the last issue, Simon confronting Lex Luthor. We also have to point out, on top of all this work that George Perez was doing, let's give him another story to draw at the bottom of the series, drawn in a completely different style. This is the Monitor tapes. This is Lila chronicling kind of like the history of the universe a little bit. So anyway, but we can jump ahead, Josh. And then, so then at that moment, Simon gets murdered in a pretty cool comic book death. Brainiac blows his brain out, like literally, like sends an energy blast to destroy his brain. It's crazy. Pretty freaking cool. Yeah. So now he's dead. And then, so now Brainiac's back in business. So now they can continue their plan. I don't remember what their plan is, but then we're cutting back to Anthro. We're following up with Chemo. We're seeing, it looks like Aqua Girl might be on her way out. We see Black Adam fighting Cole. It's kind of more the same as before. Hawk and Dove, the Doom Patrol. And then we see that Captain Marvel is Billy Batson's tied up, so he can't turn into Captain Marvel. We see Despero. These are all classic DC characters. Jumping forward here, what else do we see? So the Atom comes down. I really like this. The Atom comes down and cuts off the thing of what is it called? The gag. But the thing I like about this is that the Atom doesn't know who Billy Batson is because they exist on different Earths. So even though now everyone's in one Earth, which is I don't like, in these days the Atom's just like, don't worry, pal. I'm called the Atom. I'm one of the good guys. Don't wiggle. I was told to cut off your gag. I love that. The fact that he just didn't even know what was going to happen. So cool. Anyway, so jumping forward, and then we get some nice action with Batman. And again, this is kind of just more of the same, to be honest. The same stuff that we've seen, but then finally we see the Spectre jump in, and he's like, "Stop! You must cease this mindless battle." And so basically, he's here to explain what they've actually got to do. And what they have to do is they have to now travel back in time to the the beginning of the multiverse or the beginning of the universe so that they can intervene. Oh, no. He says that the Monitor is going to try to do that, so they must stop him, right?
Yeah, he's already gone there, and that's where they need to go is the beginning of time.
Now, again, when you're talking about time travel, if he's already gone there, it's already happened. But oh well, right? Who cares? We won't pick it apart. So we see another great scene of all the heroes about to go into battle together. And then Superman of Earth 2 with his great temple saying goodbye to Lois, a great scene. And then, again, just like a quiet moment, all the heroes talking, getting ready to go into battle. It's really nice. And then what happens next here? I'm just waiting for the click. Okay. Okay. Again, when I was a kid, this whole thing blew my mind. Who's this? Oh, this is the Superboy from Earth Prime, which was a one-off tie-in where they went back to Earth Prime, which is the Earth where superheroes don't exist, and they introduced their first superhero, which was a new version of Superboy. So he comes to help. And then later on in DC continuity, after Final or Infinite Crisis, he becomes the Superman of Earth Prime, the big baddie of Infinite Crisis.
Oh.
So this is his introduction. Then Uncle Sam does a little speech before they go into battle. It's kind of cool. And then that's it. Then they use, again, I love the fact that they're using all the different characters to help them. So now one of the Metal Man is that Gold. He like stretches himself out to help them conduct the electricity. And then we see Cosmic Boy, Dr. Polaris, and all the magnetic characters using their powers. And then the Flash using his power. This is how you do it, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
So then they use their powers, and then what happens? Then they jump. Oh, yeah, then we cut back, and I believe... Yeah, Aquagirl dies, which was pointless, I thought, but whatever. So she dies, completely unrelated to the main story. And then, so then finally they go back to the beginning of the universe, and who's waiting for them but the Anti-Monitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, they start yelling at each other, and of course, other people can observe it in the present, what's going on. So they're shouting, yelling, threatening, and then they start attacking. And then, I love the fact that Batman and Robin can do nothing because they have no powers. So Robin's like, Batman, we haven't got any powers. What can we do? We can share our courage. We can give them hope. Said in the best Adam West voice right there. So then, then we cut back and we see this subplot of who are these guys with the green glowing eyes? I don't even know. Are those Owens? No, I don't even know who they are.
I can't even remember who these guys are.
It is the planet Oa, yeah.
Yeah, the villains are attacking, and I don't know what's going on. Okay, so then we cut. So what's going on after this?
This one was really fun at the start, but this afterwards it gets so messy. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that Anti-Monitor, it was his plan to lure all of these heroes here.
Yeah, of course it was.
Because of course it was.
Yeah. But then now his plan is to replace the hand of creation with his own hand, because somehow that will change history. But then just as he's about to do that, the Spectre grabs him. I will stop you, right? So he starts wrestling with the Monitor. Mm-hmm. And then we see, look, now all the magic heroes, now their powers have to be used. So we see Dr. Fate and Zatanna and Phantom Stranger all holding hands, using their Care Bear powers to shoot light energy out of themselves. Yeah. And then Spectre and Anti-Monitor are wrestling, and all of a sudden, what happens? Reality itself explodes, and then it says at the bottom, "To be continued." And I don't know, guys. I think this could be the end. What do you think? Oh no, there's 2 more issues to go. All right, so now what's gonna happen? Go ahead.
Yeah, again, this one was a little bit. The stuff that actually mattered, I think, was really fun. Them combining their forces together to figure out a way to go back to the beginning of time, and all of the heroes working together. That's so much fun. I think that these weird subplots on Oa and all this nonsense is just utter BS. Like, I don't understand nor care what's going on in those moments. And I feel like at this point, I was almost like exhausted by not having context for any of these weird subplots tied into the overarching thing. But I do like this idea that Anti-Monitor's like, I keep getting thwarted, so the thing that I'm going to do is lure them to the end of time and then suck up all of the power from all of these heroes and use that to recreate the creation of the universe. It's interesting, at least, and I don't quite understand how the Spectre can stop him.
Neither can I.
It's not like afterlife-y things, but he's there and he's big and he arm wrestles him. Yeah, at this point it feels like they don't have quite a direction, but we get some cool moments and cool art. I really love this like shattering of the actual panels themselves. Right. It's a fun like new way that they're showing that all of creation is being destroyed. Yep. But I don't know. How are you feeling at this point, Adam? With everything going on?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
But I will say I do like the shattering, and I think it's really cool that we have that underlying strip that's going on throughout the entire issue of those black and white historical sections. And then on that next page where the universe explodes, it's almost as if history itself is exploding as well. That's cool. And I felt like those historical segments that gave some context for other characters that weren't really fleshed out during the ensuing battle was kind of neat. It kind of gave you the scope of this universe, this multiverse that was being explored. But yeah, I felt like you said it best. It started off really strong, and then it just kind of got very busy. And, you know, the Anti-Monitor's plan of, I had to lure you all here. Of course. Why? Yeah. I mean, if you were already there, you're good. You don't need to do. But regardless, you know, like I could like nitpick here and there. It was serviceable. I do like me, the Spectre. So, you know, I'll appreciate anything he's in. But things change very drastically come the next issue.
Yeah. So basically, there's not much more to say about this issue. Because there's a lot of more stuff to come. So why don't we just jump into the next one? Oh boy, this is probably my favorite issue. Even this cover, I love it.
This cover is great. There's so much going on this cover. I think I'm talking about this one. Yeah. Okay.
Best scene in the whole book. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so
I love this.
Yeah, we're feeling this. We're again. It's a weird jumping off point because I don't quite understand where this is in the convergence side of things. But Superman wakes up, and this is Earth 2 version of Superman. He's like, oh, everything that happened the past 10 issues was just a dream, I guess. No big deal. I'm going to go to work at the Daily Bugle. And he walks in.
Daily Planet, sorry.
Yeah. A Daily Planet, and he goes and sits in his office, and everybody's kind of giving him these weird looks. And then, you know, Great Caesar's ghost, who's the blazes are you? What are you doing in my office? And it's Barry White, and he's like, Perry White, sorry. And he's like,
huge difference.
Yeah. And he's like, he realizes that, oh, this is not my universe. Everything that's happened wasn't a dream, I guess. And the Clark Kent of Earth 1 shows up. He's like, oh, sorry, my uncle here. Yeah, he's senile. Or no, he makes up another excuse. He says, I might have told the little white lie and told him that I was an editor and not whatever. So we see these two Clark Kents don their Superman costumes, and they fly away to fight more crime. I don't understand why. Sorry.
No, we're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, because they're like, okay, wait a minute. I thought it was on Earth 2, but I'm actually on Earth 1. Well, if I'm on Earth 1, but then wait a minute. If we're on Earth 1, then why is Jay Garrick and his wife living here? This can't be Earth 1.
But I just don't understand what happened between the two.
Well, you're going to figure it out when the readers do. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I missed that then.
It's only the point of the whole series, but yeah, you'll see.
Whoa, some shade from Mike.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
Okay. So they go back to their house, I think, and it's not their. Oh no. So they're searching for somebody who lives here on the one universe, but then it's this person doesn't recognize them, and then they go on the treadmill again, I believe, and they.
Well, okay, we got to slow down because what happened is they went to go talk to Jay Garrick, but Jay Garrick's wife does not recognize them, but she should. And so again, just think Twilight Zone. Like, okay, some things make sense, but some don't. So then they go. Now they're like, okay, now let's find Wally. Okay, so Wally knows what's going on. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're like, what is going on? And Jay Garrick says, I did some checking this morning. People know about Barry Allen's Flash, even remember his trial, but they say I lived here all my life too. So now everyone thinks that Jay Garrick, the Flash from Earth 2, has lived on this Earth, which is, he assumes is Earth 1. Mm-hmm. So he's like, well, if this is Earth 1, I'm not from Earth 1, so how does everyone know who I am? So then what's his name? Wally says, I don't understand. Which Earth are we on? I don't know. And I think I like the answer. So they're like, well, the only way we can figure out is if let's try to go to Earth 2. So they use the cosmic treadmill, but Earth 2's not there. There's nothing out there. No Earth 2, no universe, nothing. So, do you want to continue or? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I think you should just keep going because I think at this point I'm
lost.
Yeah.
Okay. So then basically what happens is Superman is like, he has a little moment of melodrama. He's like, well, if no one on Earth remembers me, then I don't belong and I'm just going to fly into the black void. And then Superman pulls him back and like, okay, let's get back to Earth. They materialize back on Earth. They're still trying to figure out what's going on. We cut over to Rip Hunter and the Time Hunters. They're with, the Forgotten Heroes, sorry. We touch base with Brainiac, which that doesn't really go anywhere. But then, because again, even though things seem to be weird, we're also still picking up on subplots from previous issues. So now on the next page, once again, the superheroes have gotten together. Now they're at Titan's Tower, and we can see that everyone else is confused. Captain Marvel is like, I don't understand. I tried getting back to Earth S, but I couldn't. It doesn't exist. Then Uncle Sam says, reckon this explains what happened to me and my fellow freedom fighters. Tried taking off for Earth X. So it appears that Earth 2's gone, Earth S is gone, and Earth X is gone. They don't know what's going on. So then all of a sudden, who appears? But it's Harbinger.
Harbinger.
Right. And so then she's like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on, but I think we can figure out what's going on, what's happening. So then we cut over to Huntress. She is trying to get back to her apartment that she lives in as Helena Wayne. And it's a different guy that lives here. She's like, what's going on? She's like, okay, well, it's like, I have no driver's license, no electric bills, no subscriptions to Gotham Law on the record. So, and then Dick Grayson from Earth 2 is like, yeah, same thing with me. The only Dick Grayson I found listed was 19 years old living in Manhattan. Earth 1's Dick Grayson was known, but I was a non-person. So basically, Helena and Dick Grayson feel like they don't exist on this Earth, so they're trying to figure out what's going on, right? So then Harbinger gives her theory. She's like, she is basically, it seems like when the Spectre and the Anti-Monitor battled, the universe was reborn from the dawn of time. In this new universe, the multiverse never existed. So in this new universe, there never were 1,000 Earths or even 5. There's only one. So now the DC universe has been reborn, and she explains a brief history of time about the American Revolution, Enemy Ace, and then you can jump forward, World War II, and then basically what this means for DC readers is that Earth X never existed. The quality heroes, their Earth is gone. And then cut back. And then we get a little flash of Batman's origin. And she's like, only one Batman was born. Only one. In other words, there's no Batman of Earth 2, right? Because readers of DC have long known that there's two Batmans, two Supermans. So then Superman has another freak out. He's like, I'm getting out of here. My Lois is gone. So he takes off. And Superman of Earth 1 is like, okay, well, I'll follow him. And then we cut over. The Spectre is in a coma. And then we get a scene that goes nowhere. The death of Angleman. It's so important to this story that Marv Wolfman had to decide a half page to it, dedicate a half page to it. So then we cut over, and all these other things are going on, like Dr. Fate, all this stuff that doesn't really affect the main plot line. Yeah, but it's well drawn, but it just goes nowhere. And then okay, so then again the Shadow Demons come back. In my opinion, we don't need this, but okay, fine, they're back. So then again, more crap we don't care about. and then finally
your favorite issue, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite issue. Superman finally confronts Superman of Earth 2, who's trying to figure out what's going on. And then we cut back over to Wonder Woman, who goes back to Paradise Island and sees the Wonder Woman of Earth 2 being totally confused, talking to Hippolyta. She's like trying to figure out what's going on. And this is similar to the scene at the beginning of the two Supermans trying to figure out what's going on, right? We get the Wonder Woman of Earth 2 with the gray hair. Okay, so then we cut back over to Superman and Batman and Robin explaining how they went to prison to talk to Lex Luthor. And it turns out that while all the heroes remember what happened in the previous issue, none of the villains do. So the villains have no memory of anything that's happened in the past 10 issues. And so basically, then we cut over to Cave Carson, right? Another plug for another comic. We see Detective Chimp. I love this stuff. See, this is why I love this issue. And then he finds like another little hint at something to come. We don't know what yet, but the Red Skies are back. Okay, so then, what's going on now? The universe has been reborn. Remember, guys, it's not the multiverse anymore. It's the universe. There's only one universe now, one Earth. So what happens? Oh no, the Earth is getting sucked into, what is it? Another universe. The antimatter universe. So I guess Marv Wolfman forgot about that. But yeah, even though the universe has been reborn, or the multiverse has been reborn to the universe, DC Universe has been completely reset. The DC continuity has been reset. Marv forgot about the antimatter universe. That's still there, and now the Earth has been sucked into it, and now we're going to see the conclusion. So that's basically what happened, Josh. Is that this is where DC continuity was rebooted completely. All the different multiverses were combined into one, and it's basically Earth 1, but a little bit different.
I think I just missed the fact that it was due to the Spectre and Anti-Monitor fighting.
Arm wrestling
because they were already converging the whole story. So I thought that for some reason they had finally combined, but that didn't matter, and they didn't need to be weirdly converging this whole time because the Spectre was just going to do it himself anyways to save them, I guess.
I know.
And I don't understand why there was this great disappearance then too. Like, what happened with all of the nothingness?
Well, you're saying in the last issue when reality exploded?
No, in even from the beginning when everything was disappearing into the antimatter, and you know what I mean?
Okay, do you want me to tell you?
Sure.
It didn't happen. Now, because this has been reset, none of that happened. And they even say Supergirl did die, but it was just in some battle. So this is the fatal flaw of this series. They just rebooted themselves.
Right, so nothing matters.
Kind of,
nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
There goes your previous 10 months worth of reading.
Yeah, exactly.
But to say, building it up, there was a series of false starts for what could have happened. There was the universes kind of overlapping, converging. There was all that weird tech that the Anti-Monitor had that was going to eliminate these universes. It finally was escalating to the point where it seemed like it was all heading towards this through multiple ideas the Anti-Monitor had, but it finally culminated with this last plan by luring everyone to the beginning of time. I'm not saying that justifies the previous 10 issues kind of being wrought mute, but it's interesting that you have select heroes that remember what had happened. No one else does. But yeah, that's like Mike was saying, that's the start of the DC universe up until time streams and pocket realities became a thing. Basically, when they wanted to make a multiverse without actually using the word multiverse, and it got very messy.
Yeah. So there's still one more issue to go. So let's talk about number 12, the big conclusion. And Adam, you're going to do this one, right?
I'm going to attempt to. We'll see if my energy can persist through this. But
All
it is
right.
the big final issue. The cover, this big honking plastic toy of an anti-monitor is just with his open maw about to, looks like he's going to suck up all these heroes. He has all his like other action figures between his fingers. It's a great advertisement for toys. I'm being flippant, but it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The opening page just sees all these different characters looking in on shock towards something, and it happens to be, well, something. What is it? Well, that's a great question. Basically, they're on, I believe it's Brainiac's ship, and they're trying to determine what has happened with this big universal reset. They're actually taking some information out of Brainiac and trying to figure out what's happening. And they do manage to retrieve some data about various universes disappearing, because there are some characters that recall existing within previous iterations of the multiverse, but their entire world has been expunged. It no longer exists.
Yes.
So we even have a brief appearance by my favorite hero, Animal Man, here. So that's good. But it all bleeds out to them saying, I just don't know what's happening. Can the universe take this strain? And it pulls back in the next couple pages, revealing this swirling tide of red, dark energy around the Earth as the apparition of the Anti-Monitor peers over in the clouds over the two Supermen looking up at him. Welcome to the antimatter universe. Welcome to your doom. So, of course, we're going to have the big battle. There's a great actual panel layout, though, on the page that follows, where you have in the center, you have these 6 panels that show the visage of the Anti-Monitor throughout the world. And then side by side, you have all these heroes in different aspects, different areas of the world looking on in horror. So this whirling blood-like apparition just disappears and the world is dark. You have heroes engaging with each other, trying to figure out what's happening. And the two Supermen then are visited by Harbinger. Harbinger takes them forward and transfers them to another location where there also happens to be Dr. Light and a few others. Basically, she's doing something similar, a callback to the original issue where she's assembling people. Yes, right. Justice League assemble. Yes. There is a great sequence that occurs within the next page. It's not numbered, unfortunately, but you have this sky cracking with this one light. It just looks like glass shattering. Some light finally comes back into the world, but then it is just the anti-universe, and this range of shadow demons come to attack people, and it is just the most climactic battle, even more so than anything else seen in the series, as all of these heroes, ranging from Hawkman to Starman, Green Arrow, and Cyborg, everyone you can mention, just battling against this complete barrage of Shadow Men. It continues on like that. We get quite a bit of exposition, including from some of the supernatural beings who are surrounding the Spectre, trying to figure out what is happening and what they can do. We do see the heroes that have been assembled by Harbinger meet, and they are devising a plan. So basically, they're saying what we need to do is use Alexander Luthor and Pariah, who will have certain abilities that will assist them. Jumping forward a little bit, big blue beam going into the sky. It's good to know that that whole chestnut existed back then, but much better than anything in a Fantastic Four movie. I'll give it that. So we're going forward, and we're seeing just not heroes, but some villains as well, because those who were trying to figure out what their past was, what happened to their world, they encounter Darkseid. and he is welcoming them to Apocalypse. And they are just basically doing a survey, trying to figure out what's happened to their universe. And this is interspliced with scenes of heroes battling with the shadow demons of the mystical, magical heroes, trying to provide some sort of link between all the heroes to embolden their energy, to have some cohesion, because otherwise everything is just smoldering in ruin. Well, we do have one really great sequence happen, though, and this is happening where the apparition of the Flash appears, of Barry Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes away. But that image sparks Wally West to pursue, and the other heroes follow in haste. And what does it lead them to but the Psycho Pirate, who is next to the collapsed building that the Flash had deconstructed, and his empty suit from his desiccation. So at this point, like, Wally is just beating the crap out of Psycho Pirate. It takes some other heroes to drag him off. And with Wally seeing the ring of the Flash and the outfit, he knows that this is definitely meaning the Flash has died, but also it leaves little seeds for him taking over the mantle, which will happen very soon. Anyway, then we see, just not an apparition, but the full body Anti-Monitor appear in front of the heroes in gargantuan Super Saiyan form. He is busting heads. More battles ensue, heroes fighting left and right. And we have a great splash page where we see the combined efforts of heroes trying to protect citizens, battling the Anti-Monitor, and the Mystic heroes trying to, again, spread their positive vibes over to make sure everything's going to be okay. Well, what they do with all their energy is encase it into a Green Lantern, actually, which allows that energy to encapsulate the swirling mass of the shadow demons and capture them. So that's actually kind of cool that they did that, combining magic and technology. And then we go back to the main fight where we see the big powered heroes, the Supermen, the Wonder Woman, the Atom attack the Anti-Monitor. And there, of course, is also Harbinger, Dr. Light, and Alexander Luthor. So what is happening? Well, Dr. Light is pressing some light into the antimatter universe, basically taking away some of his power by imbuing it with light. Then we have Alexander Luthor, who's also using that energy that's being absorbed to somehow weaken the Anti-Monitor. It's not quite clear, but basically he's immolating from the inside out. Then
I think that they're using the suns.
Yes, the power of the stars to immolate him. That's right.
Yeah, I believe, because that's where he's drawing his power from. So Dr. Light is taking the light energy from the sun, so he is weaker, which is allowing Luthor to go in and defeat him.
That's right. And then it ends. He finally implodes, and that crackle of energy that was beneath his mouth, behind his weird carapace of his mask, is finally extinguished. It looks like he's finally truly defeated. And then what we see, they look up to see Alex Luthor, who's flying away like some sort of space baby, going, with the power I have absorbed from the Anti-Monitor added to my own, I can pry open a space between the positive and negative universes large enough to slide through the Earth and return it to its natural plane, because that was part of what was causing the disruption of the Earth. I should have mentioned that. It's off its axis. Scientifically, that doesn't actually do anything, but, comics, whatever. Anyway, he uses his big blue energy powers. He realigns the Earth. Things are getting back to normal, but there is a glimmer in the mask of the Anti-Monitor. Oh, maybe he's not defeated yet. So just as the heroes are assuming everything is fine, there is a large explosion, and the charred remains of the Anti-Monitor returns. He is glowing with crackling Kirby energy, going, I cannot be stopped, human. I no longer care about your puny world. Your universe is of no more interest to me. And he just basically wants to destroy everyone. He shoots out a massive energy blast from his mouth, which seemingly destroys Wonder Woman. Boy, a lot of people being killed in this issue. There's more fighting involved, including Superman and Superman from Earth 2. Now, Superman from Earth 1 tries to stop Superman from Earth 2 from basically sacrificing himself. He gets punched for his efforts. And there is this, I will say, there is this good exposition where they talk about what it means to be sacrificial, what it means to sacrifice yourself for the greater good, and really just showing why Superman is so important. Superman from Earth 2 stays behind. To which the Anti-Monitor says, "You are the greatest fool I have ever known." And then what a quip that Superman returns with, "Ugly, you may be right, but somebody had to clean up the garbage. Guess I was elected." So then we'll see this great fight sequence with Earth 2 Superman, and Superboy Prime is looking back, just wondering what's happening, which it's going to harken towards what's going to happen in future miniseries. But anyway, I keep wanting to say Lex Luthor. It is Alexander Luthor. He is trying to hold this rift open. He can't do it for much longer. And finally, Earth Prime, Superboy follows after this huge conflict between the Anti-Monitor and Earth 2 Superman. All the while, all these different parties are looking at what's happening. And Superman Earth 2 is doing everything. He's throwing planets at him, anything possible to destroy him. Well, then Superboy Prime goes up to try to help. Anti-Monitor is just going like in full Sindar mode. He is just a big flaming body. I'm just describing a lot of fights happening. Basically, as Josh insinuated, though, the best power he had was that he turns into basically a giant fireball, which Superman 2 punches. He punches it and disintegrates it. It is incredible. So anyway, there's a little denouement. Superman to Earth 2 Superman. He says, even though we succeeded, I only wish Lois had lived to see this, to which Alexander Luthor goes, "She is alive, Superman, alive and safe. She's been saved within this sort of pocket universe that he created." And they all go along to live happily ever after. Spoilers, they don't really. Then we do see the true denouement of what happened, of all these heroes adjusting to their life, including what I think is kind of cool, Supergirl. Oh, no, I butchered that. It is actually Wonder Woman, who has been regressed to infancy and brought down to Paradise Island again to start over her career anew. And we're also seeing some flashes of potential origins and descriptions of heroes throughout the world as it now stands with this new continuity, including Wally West fully taking on the identity of the red costume Flash, which is pretty cool, I have to say. So the final sequence involves a couple of heroes, most importantly, Pariah and Layla, who are discussing what's to happen now. But they look up at the sky and see a big Simba style, a big Mustafa style monitor looking down, saying, "I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to see what tomorrow will bring." A very good sentiment to end the series. But wait, there is an epilogue of someone who knows actually what happened, and it's Psycho Pirate, who's been driven mad with his knowledge of what happened with the multiverse. He's in Arkham Asylum, and he's ranting and raving. And it is an incredible sequence to end on with this great note of hope and just sort of anticipation of exploring this new world, and then pure madness from Psycho Pirate.
I love it. Yep.
So much happened here. It is exhausting to even recount, let alone read. But I will say this. It was a fun romp. It was many battles, many people trying to sacrifice themselves, many deaths, and many people being saved. It didn't make a lot of sense. There was a lot of crackle. There was seemingly a lot of contradiction, but in the end, we got a great world with a unified continuity. We got great homages to classic heroes. We had the potential for new origin stories to be told. And we also had some, slight seeds of showing maybe the multiverse isn't completely dead with these people who remembered what happened, which would, of course, go on to the next crisis. But I really loved it.
Well, so there's two things. Look, let's talk about briefly. The story itself is fine. It's equally as good as the previous issues. We have scenes that we don't need. We have some great fight scenes. Obviously, the art is great. George Perez never faltered, in my opinion. But what I have to comment on is a couple things. Like, first of all, at this point in the series, why are we killing Green Arrow? Why are we killing Aqua Girl? Why are we killing, like, to me, it's like, okay, what's the point of rebooting the whole universe and then getting rid of all these doppelgangers? That really irritated me. With Wonder Woman, sending her back in time, as we see, is idiotic. The fact that, like, okay, I'm going to use my laser to destroy you. You know what? It didn't kill you. One of the side effects is that instead of killing you, it sends you back in time. What? That's idiotic. Now, I'm sure that was their way to revise her origin, but they didn't need this explanation. All they needed to do was say, we rebooted the universe. We don't need an explanation. So I think that whole thing was pointless.
Or kill off Earth 2 Wonder Woman.
Well, this is Earth 1 Wonder Woman.
That's what I mean. Kill off Earth 2 Wonder Woman, and then you've already rewritten all the origins anyways. Mm-hmm. You just tell now the new story of Wonder Woman. Like, you don't need an explanation. This whole 12-issue thing was to explain the new origins. Like, they don't explain why there's only one version of Batman now. There's just only one version.
No, but what I'm saying is that, like, with this Wonder Woman thing, they add an extra layer. Now
No, I agree with you. Like, why have have this like crazy death before the rewrite or whatever?
Yes.
Have it be Wonder Woman 2, so that way you don't have to come up with this convoluted reason. Like, you're already rebooting it. Why do you have to change it like this? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's
don't kill her.
Or just don't kill her.
Yeah, have somebody else be sacrificed or something. Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is that there were some things that changed. Like, apparently they, after Crisis, want to introduce a new Flash, not Wally West. Like, they were going to keep the Wally West scene, but then introduce another Flash. So that would have been pointless. They wanted Marv Wolfman's original idea was he wanted none of the heroes to remember, which might have been smart. And he wanted to start all the DC comics over at number 1. But DC was too afraid to do that. So what they did was, and this is what makes the whole idea stillborn, they started Wonder Woman over from scratch. They started a couple other characters that I can't remember at the moment. Oh, Superman. That's an important one. Superman and Wonder Woman started over from scratch. Batman kept going. Green Lantern kept going. The Flash kept going. Hawkman kept going for 4 years, and then they rebooted Hawkman with Hawkworld, right? The Legion of Superheroes kept going for 4 years, then they rebooted Legion. So now you have this half-rebooted DC universe. So then flash forward to 2011 with New 52. Guess what? Hey, we want to reboot the whole DC universe, but Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns don't like that idea. Okay, fine. We'll let you guys do what you want. Keep Batman going, keep Green Lantern going. We're going to reboot everything else, which creates more problems. So the idea of a reboot, I hate it. But if you're going to reboot, you have to reboot everything or it doesn't work. And that's what happened, I think, with DC is they half rebooted. So let's put it this way. As a series, I love reading this, but the result of the series was a mess. And I am patiently waiting how many years now? 39 years for them to just go back. The multiverse works better. Have Captain Marvel on a different Earth, have the Quality heroes on a different Earth, have the Charlton heroes on a different Earth, and have the World War II heroes on a different Earth, and just keep Superman and Batman young, and have the old versions of them in World War II or existing now as old men or dead. But I don't think we needed this series, although it's one of my favorite comics of all time. We didn't need it. Adam, what do you think?
Okay, here's the thing, just in response to that. I think DC are cowards. You can quote me on that. because there have been so many times they've done some very bold choices that I appreciated. I know it's polarizing. I love the Dick Grayson Batman. Maybe Bruce Wayne should not have time traveled. Maybe Darkseid should have just incinerated him, because that's a change. And that's something that gave a new sort of story that could be told with Batman. I like that there was different iterations of who the Green Lantern was. But, you know, for these obvious examples, they always go back and they always go, this is going to upset the hardcore fans, so we're just going to reboot it all to what it was, which is kind of what happened with this, with the slow introduction of the multiverse once again. The fact that they even somewhat rebooted this with Infinite Crisis or Final Crisis, well, all the Crisis of that trilogy was, like, I think tantamount to just saying, we're not bold enough to do this. I think, you know, yeah, it's a little bit silly what they did with Wonder Woman with the age regression, but they could have done something significant with it. In the end, though, the main problem, sorry, my cat agrees with me,
okay.
He's yelling. But the main problem for me is just that stick to it. It's not even that if you're going to do it all the way. I don't disagree with Mike on that. Just commit to it. I would actually like 2 continuities. Let's do a continuity where we have a multiverse and a continuity where there's a universe. And we just have those. And you can pick from, if you like, a fresh start continuity or one where you have multiple worlds that exist parallel to each other. And you still could technically do that. But I'm talking outside the comic itself, I guess. Like,
well, you're basically saying what they're proposing now, which is absolute DC, which is like Ultimate Marvel. Ultimate Marvel is a completely separate continuity from mainstream Marvel. But then Marvel screwed that up too by making it just as convoluted and messed up within a couple of years anyway. So I think Ultimate Marvel is a mess.
And I think it's now combined anyways, right?
Yeah.
At this point, yeah. So
I don't mean, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure what the solution is. I mean, they could have even in this story arc had what Adam was saying, where it's almost like the antimatter world could have been created as this new, like, combined universe, and then the other parallel universe can continue to be their own thing. So you can have these stories of the original continuities continuing on, but then we can also start some new books where they're kind of dealing with the fact that they've been displaced and they do remember everything that happens here. So that way we're dealing with these huge events that have happened, but we can still continue some story. You know, like, you can do both. Like, both things can be true. Just because we're reading this Batman that's continued on for so many years doesn't mean that we're not going to check up on what's been happening with this convergent Batman. You know, it's you can do both.
Well, the thing is with DC, continuity's always been looser, and they continue that tradition in the movies. That's fine. Like the fact that after Crisis, they were very strict. They said there's no multiverse, there's no parallel Earths, there's not even really time travel. They allowed time travel, but not a lot. There was no alternate timelines. All the timelines had to match up. And then every year they went by, they got a little bit looser and a little bit looser until they kind of just gave up. But the other thing is, though, is that when DC launches a book like Batman Adventures, right, based on the animated series, there was this compulsion by fans that drives me crazy. What Earth is this supposed to be on? It doesn't matter, because when I was 5 years old, I understood that, you know, the Spider-Man comic was one thing and the Spider-Man cartoon was another, and I don't need to explain what Earth it's on. But with DC fans, they have to know. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, eventually we're going to explain that the Batman Adventures are on this Earth and the Kingdom Come is on this Earth and Frank Miller's Dark Knight is on this other Earth. But really, it doesn't matter. Even Grant Morrison and Mark Waid's explanation of hypertime, when it came out, I'm like, oh, cool, but I don't care. I don't need an explanation. I can read, you know, All-Star Batman and know that it's a different Batman. I don't care. I can read Earth 1. I can read whatever. And so at the end of the day, first of all, I do wish they would restore the multiverse, but what they really need to do is just say Earth 1 is the current DC universe with all of our young heroes, but we don't need to have them teaming up with all the other Earths. That's what creates the confusion, so that when the casual reader's reading Justice League, They don't need to be crossing over into Earth 2 every year. It can just be, this is the DC universe. And then we have this little pocket thing over here of like, oh, here's Earth 2 with all of them as old men. Cool. And then we have Quality Comics over here, which is a completely different line. We don't need to explain the Quality Comics is on a different Earth, right? Then we can have our Charlton Comics line. We can have our whatever. And that would make things so much easier to just not try to tie everything together and explain everything. I think that's the problem. And that problem begins, unfortunately, with fans becoming professionals, which is what Marv Wolfman's generation is. He comes in and he tries to explain everything and over-explain everything. And I think in a way he ruined what made DC so magical. That's the end. And I do love Marv Wolfman, but in the end we didn't need this.
Well, one point I'm just going to bring up, because I think the biggest diversion that happened for me early on was with the Vertigo imprint. Because there you had stories that from John Constantine and from Swamp Thing. And
thank you for pronouncing it correctly. Yes, you're right. Constantine. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
They did incorporate these characters within the main DC continuity. But then as the series progressed, they basically were existing in worlds where that continuity was non-existent. So there was no Superman, Batman, whatever have you. There's no real explanation for that given, nothing canonical. The only explanation is the writers didn't not want to pursue that. And I think there's a certain faith that you have in an audience when you can just trust their maturity to understand that that's the case. Now, I'm not saying this was not precedent setting, because it was. And I think it, like, at the time, I always put my mind into how it must have been when this first came out. But there's no real precedent for this, for a mass universe reboot, for a huge crossover of this scale. I think in the perspective of how it must have felt coming out, it's huge. It feels impervious. It's retrospectively when we see the fatigue from event comics and the fatigue from universe reboots that this is maybe the start of maybe not the best trend in comics overall. But as I said, already with the Vertigo imprint, we saw things where continuity that was being presented through this didn't really line up and there was no explanation given. I would say for now on, don't do anything else. Just leave your continuity as it is. If things don't make sense, it's because you have a ton of writers writing stories in a shared universe, and maybe sometimes they just don't reach a certain continuity or matchup, because that's what happens when you're working with characters that have existed in some cases for 60 to 80 years.
Right. Yeah, I do care about continuity for a series. Like, I want Superman to make sense in a Superman comic. I do not care if the Atlantis that Superman visits is the same Atlantis as Aquaman lives in. I just don't care, you know? But anyway, here's the thing. We could talk about this all night. Is there anything else you want to say, Josh?
No, I don't love the explanation for the one universe. I feel like they were setting up a way that things were going to converge, and then they were just like, actually, no, that's not what happened. Or how, you know, we're not even really going to explain to you how it happened. That there was just a big fight and it reset, and that's all you need to know. Spectre and the Monitor, the two biggest DC heroes, had a fight, and somehow everything is reset and reborn, but also not really, because some people still remember and know what happened. And did any of this stuff happen? Did Supergirl really die saving this? No, we're just going to rewrite it in a different way. It just, like, it doesn't, I feel like the ending and the rewriting of the story to just be happening on one universe, I think cheapens not even everything that's happened before this, but like everything that's happened in this story. It doesn't really matter. So
that's a huge problem. Right.
You know, to Josh, your point, I think there's an easy way they could have done this. The universes are converging because Anti-Monitor does want to destroy everything, but he doesn't have the power to destroy multiple universes. He has to combine them and destroy one.
Something, yeah.
Then you have all the worlds combined as one. you've reframed your continuity that way. And then the big battles with the Monitor or the Anti-Monitor before he destroys the world. Much more concise, to the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Oh, boy.
Anyway, so you should quickly point out there was a sequel to this in Animal Man where the Psycho Pirate was brought back and he did remember the multiverse, which was a delight when I was a teenager. It blew my mind. Then we got 0 Hour, which was sort of a follow-up where time was rewritten to fix some continuity glitches. Then in 2005, we got Infinite Crisis, which brought back all the characters from the end: Superboy Prime, Superman of Earth 2, Lois Lane. Then we got Infinite Crisis, which kind of rewrote things again. Then we got Flashpoint, which rebooted the DC universe from scratch. And then I started to lose interest. So I don't know what the hell is going on right now. I honestly couldn't tell you. I know that they just in the last year kind of brought back Earth 2 with the JSA, but I couldn't really tell you what's going on. But like I said, I like my explanation. Go back to the multiverse anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how they would even go back at this point. Maybe you have everybody remember and they are protesting and trying to figure out a way to get back to their own universe or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So have some sort of something that splits timelines again. I'm not sure, but I like this idea. And I feel like this would have been a really great moment in DC Comics if they stuck with this for a while, and then they have another event that does reverse it and restores it. Like you have a whole year of comics where it's everything is combined and nobody knows what's going on, and then after that year you have this another crisis event that brings everything back to its own universe or something. But I think as it stands, it's a little bit messy and strange. But I did enjoy reading it. I thought it was a really fun event. A lot of the character interactions are great. The art is fantastic. And I think just by itself, it's really cool. But the ramifications of what is happening afterwards is kind of a bummer, I think.
Agreed. Yeah. I'll say this and I'll say it again and I'll always say it. The best thing about the series is it led up to Grant Morrison's run on Animal Man and that great appearance by Psycho Pirate. And it even bled over a little bit to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run as well. So I think for what it did for those two, I will say, was it necessary? They told some good stories in those books and that's all I really care about. But it also is, look, you can poke plot holes through Star Wars or through Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're not flawless films. Sorry, Mike, they're not. But they, however, are films that are entertaining, that you just feel kind of amazed during the watch of them. And I feel this is the same way. This is that same early blockbuster popcorn flick of a comic. And I think that's why it's great. You don't have to try to analyze it to get any big meaning or significance out of it. It's just a very entertaining adventure story.
Yeah, despite all of my criticisms, I still recommend this. I think every superhero fan and every DC fan has to read this. Absolutely. Even though it's the end of the multiverse, it's the foundation of the modern DC universe. So yes, definitely read it and go back and listen to all of our other episodes of Slam to see where all of these characters came from, where their doppelgangers came from, Earth 1, Earth 2, and on and on and on. So that's it. We have a podcast with a beginning, middle, and end, kind of. Well, at least the beginning and end, no middle. But so that's it. We wrapped up Slam. Maybe one day we'll come back and we'll do the Charlton characters or the quality characters. But for now, we are done. So that's it for Slam. We want to thank Adam-Antium for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Recurring guest. And I want to thank Josh for doing 37 episodes of Slam.
Wow, 37, hey?
Yep.
Yeah, it was fun. I am not as familiar with the DC universe, so this was really great to kind of get multiple introductions to all of these characters and then lead up to this event. It really made it way more meaningful because I've had this story recommended to me quite a bit. So I'm glad that I've I got to experience it in this way. So thanks for organizing all this, Mike, and introducing me to a lot of these characters.
That's right. So be sure to join us on Taped Crusaders and our movie reviews. And there will be no more Slam, but there'll be other podcasts coming your way. So until the next time, see you later.